Hey everybody,
Hey, hi John.
how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I thought I'd show up early tonight. Like last meeting.
I know I figured I'd give this a shot and see how it goes.
Yeah, I know. With incidence rates, it's yeah. I normally like going, but I got some meetings tomorrow that the folks don't meet remotely.
I don't think
So
our mics, oh, they are now. Okay. You guys hear me okay?
yeah,
Yep.
Okay. I think we're going to get this meeting started.
I'm not sure where Jean Marie is, but who are we missing?
Jean Marie, let me just check
okay.
let me check the audience real quick.
Well, I talked to her earlier. She was walking. She said there was a hunter approaching her and a car almost hit her. So I said, if you don't make it tonight, I'll let them know. You either get shot or run over. On that note.
On that note, good afternoon, everybody. This is the Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. This is a virtual/hybrid meeting of the Scarborough, Maine Town Council. I hereby call this to order. I'm going to refrain from taking attendance. I think actually Jean Marie is in here now. Let me just pull her in. Okay, and I believe we'll have roll call at the regular meeting, so we'll cruise on past that part. So real quick, before we get started, I will just share the agenda on the screen for both counselors and those watching at home. The meeting's going to have 3 stages to it. Number 1 is a recap from Tom Hall, town manager, and Jay Chase, our town planner. They're going to update us on the current status of the comprehensive plan and our next steps. They're going to also talk to about the public info sessions feedback to date. And then us as counselors will ask some clarifying questions. Number 2 is probably the most important one of this evening. And to be honest, this is the number 1 objective from my perspective. Is I will present a proposed outline for the relative immediate future that Dawn and I have worked on quite a bit with a fair amount of collaboration, actually a good deal of collaboration with, I think, almost every counselor. And then we'll take some inputs and suggestions. There's a couple decision points for item number 2 that I would like to discuss as a council and get us aligned on a consensus so we can all walk away agreeing on the timeline. And lastly, we have a strict 3-minute time limit per counselor. We're going to talk about our initial perspectives about the strengths and opportunities of the current draft of the comp plan, areas for further studies, and other insights. We'll get into later why this is such a strict 3-minute time limit, but please know it's simply because we have a couple other very in-depth steps ahead of us, and I will lay those out in the later part of the meeting. So with that, Jay, are you going to make the presentation or Mr. Hall, either one?
Jay, just let me say a few things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jay pretty quickly. Good evening. Thank you for getting together and talking about a very important topic that's been kicking around for about 36 months, believe it or not. I shudder at even mentioning that time frame, but that's how long we've been talking about this comprehensive plan process. Just a couple of comments at the start of the show. I've asked Jay, and he'll be sharing shortly, a public engagement timeline. It was helpful for us to kind of map out and show the chronology of this plan and the different points along the way. And I think it's a good graphic to be able to kind of speak from for our portion. Before we do that, I just wanted to kind of speak to a couple of issues that I've had conversations with individual councilors about. The process that we're undertaking is about adopting a comprehensive plan. And I make that distinction because the statute provides for one of 2 options, either adoption or amendment. And this is certainly not an amendment. The adoption component perhaps gets a little confusing in that many of us refer to it as an update, but it truly is replacing one for the other. Having said that, there are many, many commonalities between the existing plan and the one that we're considering at this point. It's certainly not replacing it and changing it directionally. It's really building upon the same themes that emerged in the 06 plan. And so in many respects, it is updating. It's kind of the maturation of that process. Stylistically, this one is very different than the first, the current one in front. And I know that's the source of some question and maybe some consternation. And that's a point of some discussion perhaps tonight and as we go forward. But very specifically, the stylistic choice was made to have this more of a narrative, higher level document than the last one, which was far more objective driven, kind of tactical in nature with very specific action plans. Essentially, we have adopted that one cover to cover. You have as a council and those that came before you. And so from a land use perspective, much of that work is already accomplished, and there certainly needs to be some modifications going forward, but not wholesale changes. And so that's in part why this stylistically is much different. It doesn't need the same level of attention. But it does beg the question about how we're going to implement this. What is there to implement? I think that's a fair topic for some discussion. We look for some feedback. So with that, I look for Jay to share the graphic I referred to. And I think he's got a couple of comments relating to that, if you will. As he pulls this up, this is the first draft. I expect we'll be able to improve on it going forward. A couple of the areas that I would like to add to this graphic would be to actually provide links to whether it's meeting presentations or videos or minutes, whatever the source documents are relative to these various steps. This would be an opportunity for us to kind of hot link in this document so folks can quickly go to and dig down and understand something more in depth if they wish. In addition, I'd like to add in the number of participants at all these various events. And I think we'll be shocked. My guess is that we've touched and talked to nearly 1,000 people start to finish here. And so to the point of process, I think that's important just to keep in mind. So again, this is the first iteration, but I think a pretty good way of helping frame the discussion tonight. So Jay?
Sure, thanks, Tom. You'll forgive me, I can't.
Okay, I think you're on mute. It says you're talking, but I don't hear you.
All right.
I can hear Jay on remote.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear Jay.
Now it says everybody's talking at once.
Paul, can you hear me now? Jean Marie, you can still hear me though?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you, Jay.
Interesting.
This is
Jay,
John. I can hear you, Joe.
Jay, you sound better now. I stopped you from sharing though. So can you reshare and start again? I'm sorry.
I can try again, certainly. Yep.
Hopefully
it doesn't bugger things up. Let's see what happens here. Are you seeing my screen?
Yep, we're good now. Thank you.
And you're hearing me, it sounds like.
We are.
Great. So I'm going to leave it in this so I don't touch anything else and potentially mess it up. So yeah, let's see. So looking at understanding part of what we wanted to talk about tonight, Tom and I discussed about trying to lay out exactly sort of what the process had been leading up to where we're at to date. And so I'll take a few moments to run through this. I'm not going to go into each detail here, but so this process really began in earnest in May of 2017. That was the first time the consultants on the project came to the community. And so you can see on the left-hand side there, we have our process launch. And that started with, there was public meetings. Our consultant met one-on-one with various counselors and department heads. And we also had a council workshop at that time. And so that was really the kickoff to the project. And that and this was really about getting the community thinking about the future. And as part of that, in August of 17, working with the Long-Range Planning Committee, we hosted a series of meetings we called Imagine the Future. Again, these were to start to generate the vision that folks had for the community, really touch base with where we were at, and to help inform what happened a month or two later at Planapalooza, which occurred in September. You can see at the bottom of the sheet. This was really the main thrust of the public input that went into the first draft of the comprehensive plan. This was a 4-day intensive planning process, which our consultant and their whole team, I think they had a team of a half dozen or more folks, come to the community, and over a course of 4 days conducted a series of different events. Some of them were sort of your traditional presentations to the public. There were some charrette work where maps were rolled out. There were open studios and a number of different things over the course of those 4 days. During this time, I should also note, you'll see just above where it says Planpalooza, the town activated our online engagement tool. This was a website dedicated to the comprehensive plan called Scarborough Engaged. And that was actually active for 2 years, plus or minus. And that was really a clearinghouse where residents could go to learn about the plan and provide comments as well. Following Planapalooza, there was a time where the consultants took the information and we had 10 months essentially of silence as we waited for the first draft of the plan. This was something we knew about going into the project, as Tom talked about when we engaged with the consultants. We knew we were entering into something different than we had done in the past. And so really there was from September to July, we were waiting. And so July of 18, we received that first draft of the comprehensive plan. And so that began another round of public engagement. The consultant came to the community in August and gave a few presentations at that time. And then we also, again, the Long Range Planning Committee and staff went out into the community through the fall, September and October, and held a series of meetings, both neighborhood meetings. We had a conversation at the All Boards and Committees Summit. And so really tried to get people's feedback on that first draft. I'll say at this time is also when the survey went out to residents. That was in July and August of 18. And so there was that level of engagement as well. I should say also through the fall of 18, we worked to meet with all the various committees in town, not just at that All Boards and Committees Summit, but actually go to the committee meetings and receive their feedback and thoughts on elements that were specific to their charge for the community. There was a lot of feedback on that first draft, and there appeared to be quite a bit of work to be done. And so the Long Range Planning Committee really took the time to compile that information, listen to that information, and ultimately sent a list of revisions of some 37 odd pages of single space areas for revisions that the community wanted to see. That was sent back to the consultant in June of 19. And so we then received the draft back from that in December of 19. And so the Comprehensive Plan Committee reviewed that draft, did their work, and it was in March of this year that they had, at that point, basically felt comfortable enough with the draft to recommend it out of committee and to the council, for consideration. And you may recall at that time with that, they had sort of laid out a plan for ongoing public engagement, which all sort of fell by the wayside due to the pandemic and what we've had to do in face of that. So here we are now back in, I'll take us back to October of this year. And I'm gonna try to pull up are you seeing something different on my screen at this point?
We were for a second, yep.
Are you seeing?
It was a Word doc.
And you're not seeing that Word document currently?
No, I'm seeing your plan, the graphic still.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and then I'm gonna reshare, I'm sorry. There we go. Hopefully you're seeing the Word doc now.
Yep, perfect, thank you.
Excellent. And so this is something that I think we've reviewed with the council in the past, but just to go over sort of where we're headed from here, if you will. So again, you'll see at the top above the COVID disruption line, the March 6th date that I talked about. And so really we've worked to re-engage the public in the process. And as part of that, kicked off with a for the reintroduction of the plan. Long-Range Planning Committee is currently in the process of conducting 3 public forums. The first one was last night. The second one will be tomorrow night. And the third is going to be on December the 1st. That's a Tuesday. Again, as part of trying to collect and gather public comment on the draft. And then through the month of December, maybe into January, the committee will consider sort of these final comments and work to make any final recommendations and get those out of committee and back to council in January/February. And I understand, Chair Johnson, you're going to share sort of what you think the council's process might look like going forward. So I just sort of put Q1, but again, I fully understand that that's at the council's discretion, but I just want to try to give some sort of timeline there as far as where we are in next steps. The thing I failed to mention is throughout the process from May till now, the Long Range Planning Committee has been continuing to meet. They've had 20 different meetings. A number of those meetings were actually, I think it was at the direction of council at the time, were held actually in the evening hours. Their normal meeting time for all the years I've been in town have been 8 o'clock on Friday mornings. But there was a recognition that that may not be the most convenient time for the public to engage, particularly around the comprehensive plan. So they held a number, I think it was 12 or so of those meetings in the evening hours. And we did actually have a few people attend upon occasion. And a few of those were also recorded. And we are working currently, if anyone's had an opportunity to visit the town's website today, we're working to populate the comprehensive plan page with as much of those background materials as possible. So I think I'm done sharing for now.
So Jay's given kind of an update of the process, how the Long Range Planning Committee and staff is kind of re-engaging the public. What we'd like to do, and I think the purpose of this workshop, is to have maybe a parallel path track whereby we're able to hear directly from counselors what your comments, questions, concerns are. Ideally, find ways to work through those and with those and come back to you. So the point of all this exercise is that the document that comes back to you for adoption consideration will be different somehow than the one as it exists today. And presumably there'll be an additional public process that you'd like to consider from that point moving toward final adoption. So again, we're looking for that parallel path to involve the council.
So Jay, before I do present my parallel path, so to speak, can you give us, and then immediately we'll do Q&A before I take over. Can you give us just a quick, I watched the, after the fact, I watched the public meeting last night, the public hearing. Can you just give us a recap of some of the feedback you heard last night?
Sure. Let's see. So we had about 20 attendees. So that's in addition to the committee members there. It's kind of, I would say by and large, it was a quiet crowd. I think we had 4 or 5 people speak. I think we had questions. I know Ms. Gleitstein asked some questions about process to date and those sorts of things. We heard some comments from neighbors in the Higgins Beach neighborhood, looking for some revisions to language to be sure that we're really representing that area as they see would be appropriate. I have to flip through my notes. I will say we have also received, started to receive some emails as well through this process. I think I've started to see some comments around ensuring that the plan really speaks to sea level rise, resiliency, and climate change issues. Have been some of those comments. I think there was, oh boy, let's see. And Jean Marie or Betsy, I know you were both there. Feel free to fill in the gaps that I might be missing here. I think there were some questions just around the language about how we blend companies or development with our natural resource base. Yeah, I think that's sort of at a high level covers it.
Thank you. So before I move to my agenda item, any Q&A for Jay or Tom about what was just presented? Councilor Gleisting?
Yeah, so that was quite helpful. I guess one of the first questions that I have is, so looking through the comp plan, I guess there was a meeting in the winter of 2016 that on the picture at least showed a number of people in the chamber. That seems to be like the first time the Long Range Planning Committee started engaging folks. But if you take the kickoff of May 2017 between now, that's about 42 months. And then it appears that, I don't know if my math is right here, but it's been 28 months maybe since we received the report, and it took you 10 months to get the report. So, just kind of looking at the process that other towns have followed, it seems like it's typically maybe an 18 to maybe 21, 22 month process. So I guess I'm just wondering the perspective of the people who have been involved about why it's taken so long to get where we are today.
I'll offer my opinion. I think the first draft that our consultants provided us really missed the mark, and it did require a lot of extra work on our part, and that took a lot more time than we ever expected. It was nearly a year between getting that first draft from them, circulating that draft for resident input, advisory committees input, and staff, working with all that information in the Long Range Planning Committee and turning back substantive comments to them. So that was really an extra year that we didn't plan on. And then I think you add the extra 8 months or so that no one planned on this year. That's set us back. So you're right. It's double the length of normal.
So just another question. The 20 meetings that the Long Range Planning Committee had, can you explain that process? Because I asked like a specific question last night. Like, did they go through section by section? Whenever there was edits, was it pointed out? Did they vote on changes? So for example, I think I just I'm not picking on Higgins Beach, but I used them as an example because they were a growth hamlet, then it was removed. Now they're back to a growth village. Regardless of what that means, I'm really more interested in the process of, so I'm assuming the decision makers about what ended up in the final plan was the Long Range Planning Committee. And so I don't have a good sense of what that process looked like. Did you make changes and it was marked up and they were supposed to read it before they came and they just all said, well, that looks good? Or did they go through section by section and then you point out edits and then they took votes? And are those votes on the record? So that, from what you had from the consultants to that process Tom described with what took a year, the 20 meetings, how did that progress? What did those meetings look like? How did they work?
Sure, yeah, and I guess I didn't sort of understand sort of that detail. So the Long Range Planning Committee generally works by consensus. So I wouldn't say they voted, but certainly they took the plan sort of section by section. We would try to, take it in manageable chunks for each meeting. And so they would sort of go through each section and there would be a conversation around what type of changes, modifications they'd like to see. Staff would work on those in between meetings and sort of bring that back and, hopefully make the changes. They would look at those quickly, say, yep, all right, let's move to the next section. So that I think hopefully answers how that committee works. They didn't sort of vote on each one. Really the vote they took was that one in March where they sort of said, okay, we're good with this as a total, if you will.
And if I could, I'm sorry, if I could add just as a member of Long Range Planning throughout most of this process, those 20 meetings weren't just dealing with this either. It was a portion of a meeting. So it wasn't like we had 20 hour and a half long meetings on this.
Right.
And as Jay said, we work by consensus on long range planning. So there's not a formal vote per se. Yeah, there was a lot of input, good input at that point. But again, we have to remember that, you know, this is the draft and it's coming out to town council. So what we're doing is trying to get something, and I don't like to use the word finished product because I mean, it's finished, but it could still use some tweaking if the council decides to tweak.
Right,
So.
absolutely. I'm just trying to understand the process. So I know those meetings are sparsely attended, unfortunately, because they're so impactful. And maybe we can do some education around that with folks about how they might want to engage with that particular committee, if that committee even exists after this process. But so, you know, were those the sections that you were going to address? Were those on the agenda to say, today we're going to address this section, or would it just say long range, you know, comp plan? What was the specificity of the agendas?
I would have to go back.
You know, just to say, like, if we're going to go through this process, you know, we talk about engagement, you know, sometimes somebody's going to want to engage on, like the topic you just said, the sea level and the change, you know, the whatever, but they're not going to want to engage on another part of it. So I asked this as a information for me to understand how best to engage with the public, what you had on those agendas. And did you ever see that made a difference one way or the other?
Yeah, so I'm trying to pull up some agendas right now just so I can sort of, because I do recall seeing some of those agendas were sort of specific in that regards, but I will also say, and as I looked this up, I think one of the other things the Long Range Planning Committee did, I mentioned, was a lot of these outreach meetings. They did sort of try to target certain groups to talk with about, you know, there was conversations with the conservation groups, there's conversations with the library board, there's conversations with the SEDCO and Chambers Vision Committee. And then, as I mentioned, sort of individual conversations with different committees of town. So I think in some ways there was some of that, but I do think as well, some of the agendas, yeah, so I just pulled up an agenda here where the agenda is the comprehensive plan updates. This is the introduction of baseline infrastructure, introduction of draft revenue. And so I think some of the agendas did call out those specifics.
Thanks.
Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I just have a question / suggestion, and I don't know if it's possible. But Tom, you had mentioned earlier, and I think you're just estimating maybe 1,000 people were engaged throughout the process. I think it would be really interesting to understand how many of those are unique participants. So even though we have surveys and all of these events that occurred, is it really just 600 people who participated? I think that would just be interesting to know. And then also, I think if there's a way, if we have that information, to not only know some demographic information about those participants, if we have it, but also as we go forward, seeing if there's a way we can reach those same participants again to validate what's in there. You know, 4 years, a lot has changed. And so I'd be interested to give them another opportunity to say, is this still the same vision you think Scarborough ought to have as part of our process?
Yeah, thank you, John. That actually leads to, we definitely kept with all the public meetings, we do sign-in sheets, we get folks emails. So I do have a huge email list, and I don't know quite how many folks are on it. And so with each time that something comes up, you know, when the draft came out in 18, when we had a new draft in 19, when the committee did their work in March, and when we re-engaged this, we did a big email blast. So those are the specific folks who have engaged, but we also used our other tools, the e-newsletter, the Facebook, the leader. So in addition to letting the folks know who did actively participate, we also were able to reach out others in the community that maybe hadn't yet had an opportunity to or interest at the time. So, so we had worked on those type of things as well.
Yeah, and John, I probably overestimated that 1,000, and undoubtedly there's a lot of double counting there. You know, there are folks in this community, every community, that are very interested in kind of hobbyists on these sorts of things. There's others that are disinterested for whatever reason. So there's no question that number, I was mentioning it really just to demonstrate that there's been a fairly thorough process, and I'm not sure what more we can do to beat the bushes, but we're certainly willing to hear. And I know that the council is going to take up its own process and use its communications committee perhaps to find a way to get input once again.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's hard to know is, so I mentioned that project-specific website we had up for 2 years. We definitely know we had, you know, I think it's in the comp plan, some 3,000 or 4,000 visits, or yeah, visits, 120 odd registrants. So somewhere in between those two numbers is a unique visitor. What that is, we don't know. But anyway.
Councilor Katarina, and then I want to try to get to, I want to make sure we have time for agenda item number 2. So
I just have a real quick question that doesn't need to be answered right now, but I would be curious in knowing how many members of the current town council took part in any of these meetings or in any of the workshops or anything, you know, from the beginning of the comp plan process. And if not, if you didn't, I would be interested in knowing why not.
was that rhetorical?
No, I mean, if you want to answer, I would really like to know, because
it sounded slightly rhetorical. It sounds like it's going to take up some time. Mr.
Well,
Hamlin, would you like to? Yeah.
I'd like to respond to that. Some of us, when this thing started, weren't counselors. Okay, so yeah, we were members of the public. Maybe we had more time to do it, but I attended these. I didn't go to the Planapalooza, but I did go to the sessions in which they reviewed the survey data, and there were extensive discussions about some of the findings and recommendations. So yeah, I absolutely participated in this and have been a close follower and reader of it, and someone who compared it to the 2006 plan. So yeah, yeah, I participated and continued to avidly follow it. Thank you.
Councilor Johnson, there you go.
I'll respond to that. I rely on my council liaison to keep me updated in the town council. So thank you very much.
well, I wasn't the liaison in 2017. I was off the council that year, but I took part in all these meetings.
Okay, we're gonna, Jay, thank you. Are you downstairs right now, Jay? You need a bigger office. I'm on record I'm gonna fight for you in budget season. Okay, so agenda item number 2, I am going to make a brief presentation. Some of you have, I think all of you have seen this. I'm going to redo it because there's been slight tweaks from the leadership meeting this afternoon. And I really want to leave tonight with a consensus that we are happy with the timeline as outlined. So I'm opening up any and everything in this timeline up to discussion. I hope we walk away all feeling good by the end of the discussion about the timeline. Before I start, I just wanted to publicly thank Mr. Anderson. Councilor Anderson helped me through this process and made it more robust. And I know he solicited input from Councilor Gleistein as well. And so I hope I will. Okay, Jay touched on this, so I don't think I need to, but just to reiterate, our process as a body, so to speak, kicked off on October 7th, and we had a very large joint workshop between Town Council, Planning Board, and the Long-Range Planning Committee. I will share this publicly, so that is hyperlinked, so you can watch that. You can watch that workshop. I think we'll all agree that that workshop was more of a presentation. There was a lot of people, so I'm not going to suggest that was super productive. It was just a good introduction to the process. As mentioned before, long-range planning is in the process of holding 3 public forums. It sounds like, well, I watched last night, it sounds like it was well attended. It was not necessarily well engaged as far as I think comments are concerned, but that's okay. I think at least we had a good outcome as far as people that were watching. So here's my suggestion for steps for the council. To be completed by December 4th, which is a Friday, each counselor would meet with town staff to refine their comments from this workshop. I'm referencing this workshop. The chair or vice chair will be present at each meeting. There's one slight change. I had originally circulated to the council a December 1st deadline. December 4th is a Friday, which makes more sense. And I believe Mr. Chase is on vacation, so it gave us a couple more days. With input from, I think, primarily Councillor Gleistein and Councillor Anderson, I think there were some concerns about at least the perception of lack of transparency. So this afternoon we have committed, if the council wills it, that every individual meeting will be broadcast via Zoom and publicly posted ahead of time. So any audience member can watch, essentially watch these individual meetings if they would like to. Again, we were thinking of having every one of these meetings virtual in Zoom. This is a discussion point. This is just my proposal. We can discuss it after I'm done. And then we would have a 2-hour workshop on December 16th. Originally, when I circulated to this council, this was the 9th. But again, I think timeline-wise, we don't want to try to overcrunch it. And we would take the input we received, as I just referenced, and we would synthesize the prevailing takeaways. And that would be, my guess is that would be the first workshop that we get into the some of the nitty-gritty. We'll discuss, hopefully in those individual meetings that we have, that we answer these questions individually, was what's done well, what are the opportunities for improvement, and are there any critical requirements that the council would like to see included in a revision. Then the thought is a tentative date of January 10th that the Long Range Planning Committee would combine the input they've received from these 3 public meetings that are happening now with the input that we have will have compiled, and will at least give us a readout, so to speak, not expecting a revised draft, but a readout of perhaps give us a timeline on when they could deliver that revised draft that would incorporate the feedback from these previous meetings. Highlight to us in January the approach that they suggest to be updated or that they will update based on the feedback, and essentially reiterate or reintroduce, or perhaps some new ones, alignment on the general principles and themes that focus due to the public feedback. Once these revisions are complete and sent to us essentially as a council, Don and I think both agreed that, like this past budget we went to, I think we should all agree to be flexible. There's a very good chance that after this process is done, maybe we all feel very comfortable where everything is, or perhaps we feel there needs to be more process. So as of right now, there's no time frame, so to speak, for first reading. We would like to task the communication committee to then take 5 to 10 takeaways. I believe there's already 5 pretty defined in the current version from the comp plan, and actually develop some messaging and from those takeaways. Instead of asking the public to read a 200-page document, can we do some 5 to 10 takeaways, task the communication committee to help us get the word out, and then have them, if we think is necessary, which I think we will, have them essentially do a second round of public outreach that it probably mirrors or is pretty similar to what the Long Range Planning Committee is currently doing, but it would be ownership of the council. So with that, again, I am hoping that tonight we leave with a very common understanding of the timeline. So that is, I would say, my proposal, so to speak, and I welcome any thoughts, criticisms, or suggestions. Councillor Johnson?
Good job. Now I want to go back to it's not up there. I want to go back into that, I think it was 12.4. The meetings with staff being part of a public process. I would like to have a discussion on that. I don't agree with that. It's not that nothing is transparent. It's that I come up on occasion and have discussions with Mr. Tom Hall on a variety of items, and those are not public process and they don't need to be. So I have some concerns about the plans. I want to have a frank discussion with it. I think the results of that discussion should be part of the public process brought forward in this forum. But the discussion itself is no, but that's just my point of view. And I'm hoping if we do go forward with that, there's an opt-out part on that or something. But anyway, those are my thoughts on that.
Okay, Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, and that is currently, I know this is not an official meeting, but that's on the floor. Because I do think that that is one of the areas of discussion that I think there's a little bit of difference of opinions. So just to recap, originally that was the format that we would synthesize those at that 2-hour workshop, but I think there were some concerns about transparency. So I'm going to go with Councilor Clucci, and then Councilor Anderson, you can piggyback on him.
Yeah, I actually agree with Councilor Johnson that, we are not that structured so rigidly that we can't approach town staff or the manager with thoughts or concerns or comments. And I think we do that. We should do that regularly. So I think that's part of a normal course of our jobs as counselors. I feel like this is a little bit hijacking the long-range planning committee's process at that stage where, yeah, we should be advocating for what we think is right or what we need and using whatever tools at our disposal to do that. But at the end of the day, I want them to come forward with what their plan is. And then we do need to follow our process. And I like that second half of the process that you outlined where communication is going to pick some pieces and let's go put it in front of the public again with our spin on it and see what they say. So I guess I agree with Councilor Johnson. I thought that first half, yes, we should be meeting with town staff or sharing our concerns with long-range planning and town staff. I don't think that needs to be a public process. I think the result is going to be public when it comes back to us at the end.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, Paul, I appreciate you putting out that recommendation because, for taking Betsy and my feedback. But I think for me, it's less about, making those individual sessions transparent and more what I think would be beneficial is actually hearing from each other in terms of what we think, because I know I have some opinions that some of you might disagree with and push back on that might change my mind. And I want to be able to have that discussion with everybody to make sure we're all in alignment on what success looks like. I guess I just don't understand how, if we're meeting one-on-one with Tom and town staff, how we're getting that big picture so that we can really get to those key themes as a council to make sure we're all in alignment on what's important to make any revisions or updates to the plan. So I would actually propose, rather than what you propose, why not have a workshop where we can all have a free discussion around what our feedback is and what we'd like to see so that we can see where we agree and see where we disagree and kind of have that conversation.
Yeah, John, I'll just briefly respond. I think the idea was that's precisely what the 2-hour workshop would have been, I believe on the 16th. It was just a way of trying to focus the conversation more, I guess I would say, but your point's taken. But I just wanted to, that was my vision, which right or wrong was that the December 16th workshop would be what you're referencing. But I completely get what you're saying. Councilor Gleistein and then Councilor Hamel.
Yeah, so I think transparency is super important in this process, but I really want to hear from, I know Councilor Johnson has done a lot of work on this. He's got a lot of thoughts. I really want to hear those. And I want to hear of the work that Councilor Anderson has done. I want to hear the work that Councilor Hamel has done. I want to hear the work that Councilor Clucci and Katerina and the chair has done. We do influence each other. This was kind of an odd thing that just kind of surprised me because I can't think of, maybe before I got on the council, I've only been on a year, but since I've been on, we've never done anything like this before. Anybody that wants to go in and meet one-on-one with Jay or Tom or any of the staff, we can definitely set that up. As a matter of fact, any person in the town can set that up. We have great staff, and you say, Tom, I need to meet with you and talk about this, you're going to get a meeting. So you don't have to be an elected official to get a meeting with our staff. They may be a little busy. They may have to put it off a little bit, but we have open door policies, open phone calls. We're incredibly responsive to residents as staff. And so it just felt really odd to me. We normally do this in a workshop, and could it be a little messy? Sure, a lot of what we do is messy. That's the nature of the beast. That's democracy. So, you guys definitely influence me, and we all bring our own expertise. We all bring our areas of interest and focus as well. And Jean Marie, has focused on this quite a bit. So if Councilor Johnson were to say, well, this is something I'm thinking, Councillor Katerina, I would like to hear what she has to say about that. This is, this is my feedback on that. I want to hear what, Councillor Anderson with a new voice, answers back. It's just the give and take that served us well through a really rough budget season. It served us well through all kinds of processes. And this just felt a little strange. I think if Councillor Johnson wants to go in and meet with Tom and Ken, I'm sorry, Tom and Jay, he probably already has. I think that's great. Again, any resident has that option open to them. That's the beauty of living in Scarborough and having, just super responsive staff. So this was quite odd to me. I think, as much as Long Range has attempted to have public input, I did get feedback about the session, some of it good, but some of it, where maybe we could improve. And I wasn't going to bring it up tonight, but kind of touch base with Jay on it. We do have the challenge of COVID. I don't think we can put that aside. So the more we can discuss with each other and get out there, I think the better that is going to make the process. And at the same time, we can hear Jay and Tom answer a question. Hey, John just asked that question. Hey, Jay just answered it. I don't need to ask it now because it's been asked and answered. And so it just really struck me as odd. No offense. No offense about that. Thinking out of the box is something I love. I don't agree with Councillor Clucci. I think we could start those sessions, start those conversations. I think Long Range Planning has basically delivered. I don't think they're going to make a lot of changes. If you listen to the sessions and a lot of what they say in their meetings, they're not looking to make a lot more changes. So I do think, if we want to move this forward, we could start with a couple of workshops. We've got one scheduled, but let's just get it out there. Let's talk to each other and then decide how much we want the public to participate too, because I'm not smart enough to do this. I'll tell you that. And I haven't been engaged enough on it. I'll admit that. And I want to hear from people. I want to hear from my fellow counselors. I want to hear from staff. And I just feel that one-on-one is I don't know what I would benefit from that, quite frankly. I'm just not smart enough.
Councilor Hamel, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think throughout we've struggled, even in the early going here, how to embark as a council and, where to weigh in this effort. And we talked about the length of the process, the timing, the steps, how transparent it should be, or how direct we should be with our feedback. So we've talked about a lot of different options. I still don't think we've really sized this entirely ourselves to know, what needs to be done and how long it's going to take. So every time we try to impose a time frame or even a process, it doesn't seem to really fit quite right. So I just, I think there's a lot more work ahead. I applaud the work that's been done so far, but it is, like people have said, a very different type of plan than the last one we had. And, I just struggle with where to, receive it. Number one, I think Councillor Clucci's made some great points about that. Our work really shouldn't start until we're ready to receive it. However, we can't just kind of take it and assume that it's done. It's a little bit like the British baking show. We kind of take it out too early. It's not baked yet. You leave it in too long. It's, it burns. But it's very different. And I still struggle with the level of detail, the strategic statements, the guiding principles, all of these things are big statements, but they don't really have a lot of detail on them yet. And they're still going to require some work to implement. The plan in the current form, I don't think is implementable. If we were to get it tomorrow, I really wouldn't know what to do with it. So I'm a little bit agnostic about process, but I do believe we need to get some sort of consensus as a council, however preliminary that may be.
Before, Jean-Marie, you're next, but before I do that, Dawn, just to the question at hand, because I think it's really important that we do a couple up and downs on this, so to speak.
Yeah.
Are you changing your mind about the individual meetings? I don't mind the individual meetings. However, I'm not shy about sharing tough feedback about what I think and feel. So okay, Jean-Marie.
Yeah, I am looking at this and listening to what everyone's saying. I'm wondering if perhaps if you reworded it, because it sounds almost like a commandment that thou shalt meet with planning and the manager. And I don't have any need to meet with the planner or the manager. I've been working on this like since forever. So I would like, why don't we put it that, please, if you have individual questions, meet with the manager or Jay by X, and then we talk about it. We have a good, frank discussion, you know, at whatever future date you want to do it. That's just my opinion, because when you put a thou shalt, it does feel a little odd. And
is that better, Jean Marie? The thou shall, is that
thou shalt,
yeah.
But just to go back to it's not, you know, I feel that we have the right to meet individually with members of staff at any time without it being publicly on Zoom. And I have to agree with Councilor Johnson that, you know, why would I want to do that? No. Just, you know, we have a job to do as counselors, and that is to be open and frank in discussions, but use the time between now and our next meeting to get information that you need so that you can be an informed complainer or person to add to the discussion.
Yeah. So I think,
yeah, and just Paul, really quick, I wanted to clarify that I was not for whether we record Zooms, you know, every time you go to Tom's office or whatever, I'm not asking for a Zoom to be recorded. I was for workshops where we're hammering.
No, I understand. I completely understand. I think it's really, okay. I guess I would, so then I'm asking for everybody's help, because in the sense where this workshop needs an agenda, right? And you know, I think if I can speak as frank as possible, when my conversations with individual counselors, I still don't quite know it's very unclear to me, people's issues. I think people have talked in lots of generalities. There's lots of concern about a process that has happened in the past. And I think it has been having conversations with counselors. It's very hard. If I were to make an agenda right now, it would just say, let's talk about the comp plan. So I guess I'm asking everybody that I have no problems scratching the staff meetings, because frankly, we can still have them on, or I'm going to still have mine, right? Who cares, right? But this is where it's important that these things are structured. We are currently on one agenda item right now, and it's taken a half hour, right? And so I think it's really important. I think idealistically, sure, I would love to get around the table cold turkey and have a great workshop. But the reality of it is, it is government, it is 7 people. And I'm just asking for everybody's then help instruction and agenda that we all agree that we will follow. So I guess that would be what I'm asking of everybody. So I think Councilor Anderson, you had your hand up. I don't know if you still do. Then I'll go to Hamill, then I'll go to Katarina. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. You're after that.
Yeah.
Councilor Anderson. Yep.
Yeah, I'm thinking about first reacting to your statement, Paul, because I had something else I wanted to bring up before we close this. But so, you know, I agree. Like, to have an efficient workshop on the 16th, it does make sense to me that somebody takes point in terms of collating everybody's feedback so that we have a starting point for conversation and can make sure we prioritize, especially if, you know, some of us have similar concerns that can be noted so that we can make sure we talk about those first and foremost. So I do think to get to a successful discussion on the 16th, you know, for those of us that do have feedback, that do want to provide it, I do think we need to kind of get that down somehow. If one-on-one meetings is the best way to do that, and that's the only way to get it done so that we can have a good discussion on the 16th, you know, that's fine with me.
So Councilor Hamill, Katarina, then Johnson. I think that'll probably bring us to our time.
Very, very briefly, I think our challenge is we're being asked to do a couple of things. We're being asked to kind of lay out a process by which we want to, you know, try to weigh in as a council, but we're also providing input on how the public's input can be obtained, you know, most effectively as well. The problem I've got is I don't really know what kind of revisions are going to be made by the authors. I think I'm still looking at a 170-page plan that has not changed dramatically So I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine to follow whatever process we think we need, but that implies that something will be done with the feedback. And I don't really feel that we should take responsibility for editing the plan and rewriting it. I think that's goes beyond what, I mean, I'm happy to do that, but I'm not sure that's really what our role is. So then the question becomes, how does that get done? How does that get done? So, and I don't mean to, answer your question with a question. So,
Councilor Caterina, then Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, I'm going to put my teacher hat on. And why don't we have an assignment, so to speak, that you come to the workshop on the 16th with specifics about what you think needs to be done to the plan, what you want to see. And I don't mean, itsy bitsy minutiae changes, but either directional things or this is missing, or we need to insert thus and such. And we all bring that, and that becomes part of the public record, is what we bring in and discuss. But that's just me.
So that was precisely what the FAQs were supposed to be, and only Councilor Johnson and Councilor Hamill did their homework. So I looked at the FAQs as a failed attempt to do exactly what you said. So I'm actually on plan B, because we had that shared document. And by the way, I'm guilty of this too. None of us did that except for 2 of us. So that was precisely what I was trying to do, and it didn't work. So that's where this came from.
I don't think it was as direct as it could have been. I looked at, when you put that out there, I looked at it as more, like what happened, like Mr. Hamill could go to work with my daughter at University of Chicago as a manuscript editor. Just picking on you, Don. But anyway, but I mean, substantive, we just make an agreement that we're going to come in on the 16th with substantive issues, kudos, whatever, for this plan.
Yeah, I would say the agenda's there. Those 3 things that you laid out, I would just add a 4th one. What's right, what's wrong, whatever you had up there. I'd say that's the agenda. We all talk on each topic. I would just say the 4th one is bring your ideas for how to engage the public. So, I think you had the agenda there. And I totally agree with Jean Marie. It's up to us every meeting to be ready. And, so I think, part of that might be people meeting one-on-one with town staff. It might be a couple of us getting together with each other. It might be, some forum, a forum, obviously we're listening to and participating in the long-range planning forums. It might be reaching out to people that responded to that,
Councilor Gleason, I just want to get to Councilor Johnson. He had his hand raised, and we only have 2 minutes left. So,
sorry about that.
Councilor Johnson.
Just, again, I brought this up before. Just think of this as a group just for a second. We do this all the time. We amend ordinances. And when we sit in this panel, what's presented to us is the amendment to the ordinance. We discuss that. We do not discuss the whole ordinance.
Right.
We just had an exercise with Brian Longstaff in shoreline zoning. You know how difficult that ordinance was. We focused just on the change of the ordinance. So if the plan, and Jay had mentioned, we did leverage things from the 206 plan to 220. We let things slide that had already matured and didn't need to really reestablish it. If we could focus on what changed in this plan, I think a lot of this confusion would go away. I just don't know how we can get what changed. And that's what I'm going to end on.
I am going to give Councilor Clucci the last word.
I appreciate that. So I just wanted to comment, part of the reason you may not have got much response to the fact was that a good number of us are reasonably comfortable with the progress that's been made on the plan to date and where it is. And I certainly find myself in that boat. That doesn't mean I think it's perfect. I don't think it ever will be. I think a lot of good public outreach has gone into it. I think directionally it's yes, this is where I think our aspiration should be as a community. We're not going to do all of this stuff, right? So there should be something in there for everybody, but no, not everything's going to happen. And somebody's going to have to make decisions about what does take place. So, I know we're trying, I think that's where, to your point, we need to get specific about where there are serious or significant issues from counselors. And I want to understand that. I know I've had some individual conversations and it's helped me because I didn't understand where the issues were. And so we have to work through that as counselors. I think talking to each other and then another workshop, I think bringing some of those things out would be helpful as well.
Okay, so this is what I'm taking away. So everybody just maybe give me a nod and a thumbs up. I am scratching the individual meetings. We are going to, the next date we're going to discuss this is December 16th at a 2-hour workshop. However, I might pitch to do December 9th because that's an off Wednesday, and I would rather have a 2-hour workshop on an off Wednesday. We do not want to do a 2-hour workshop and then a council meeting. So I reserve the right to call that December 9th. We will scratch the individual workshops. I'm going to publicly make a pitch, which we can take offline individually, but I think I would like to appoint Councillor Anderson to maybe help. In fact, if I get head nods, I'll do it now. If we can appoint Councillor Anderson to actually help me develop the agenda by talking to everybody. Don and I have a lot of things going on, and I think that a fresh set of eyes on this would be great. So if Councillor Anderson is willing to do that, and then I vote that that's what we're going to do. Councillor Anderson, you are hereby responsible for developing the agenda for the workshop with all of our inputs, of course. But I really, Don, I think you'll agree with me. I think Don and I have to step away from it and get somebody else in here to help out. So I appreciate.
Here's the assignment.
Yep, there's your assignment. Come on either December 9th or the 16th. Come ready with a great agenda. So with that, I think we're going to roll into the regular town council meeting. So thanks everybody. That was very helpful. And I'll release an updated slide because I would like to do this for the public very quickly. So I think we're pretty close to me being able to release something for the public. So
great. Good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks everybody.
And Jean Marie, yet again, we agreed.
Don't tell anybody.
This was actually publicly this time. Okay, so
I don't know. It's 2020. What can we say?
That's true.
Here. 2021 will be back to old ways.
We got a month and a half. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. This is the Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. This is a regular town council meeting. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is roll call. Tony?
Councillor Clucci?
Here.
Councillor Gleisting?
Here.
Councillor Anderson?
Here.
Councillor Katarina?
Here.
Councillor Johnson?
Here.
Councillor Hamel?
Here.
Chairman Johnson?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4 is general public comments. This is for comments of items that are not on the agenda. And if you would like to comment on the workshop you just witnessed, if you're either one is fine. So again, this is general public comment on things that are not on the agenda. I have none. Item number 5 is the approval of the minutes from the November 4th, 2020 regular town council meeting and the November 12th, 2020 regular town council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just want to point out I did make an error at the top. I forgot to change the agenda to minutes, so that has been corrected.
Unacceptable.
Especially
Tony, can you call the vote?
Councillor Clucci?
Yes.
Councillor Gleisting?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous.
Item number 6 is adjustments to the agenda. I don't believe there are any. Item number 7 is the treasurer's warrants. I actually signed those about an hour and a half ago. Item number 8 is the town manager's report. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things to report. First, let's start on COVID precautions. I think we've all witnessed over the last several weeks, our state and our whole country is actually, moving in the wrong direction, in my opinion. It appears as though community spread is upon us. And in fact, today we've had an incident involving our public works department and the administrative pool and also a police officer. That automatically puts several of my key staff in a 14-day quarantine. So it's just ever present. And so I mentioned it for all of our benefits. We're going to be starting to roll out some operational changes. I can tell you we've got very good protocols. Staff is following them to the letter. I'll also report that the public really seems to be staying away. Foot traffic is down considerably. And so this feels like a pretty safe workplace. But having said that, just with community spread, and really to protect my staff to make sure we can provide the services. I can't afford to have town hall shut because something happens here. We'll be looking to do some rolling, staggering and split shifts with staff for folks that can work remotely and are productive and we've got good experience to know who they are. We'll be encouraging that to really kind of thin out the folks that are in and around town hall. So I don't think I'm suggesting anything that many businesses haven't employed themselves. It's just the time has come, I think, for us to get back to that. I think for public meetings, even this is probably the largest crowd we've assembled. I think everyone's adhering to all the rules. So I think we're going to go forward, trial and error. And I think it'll be a council decision as to when we do something different. But I know many of us enjoy getting back face to face and appreciate those that are able to connect remotely. A couple other things that we have in place. Public safety have been doing temperature checks for staff upon the beginning of the shift since the beginning. Public Works has adopted that practice last month, and now Community Services is doing it as they're all working out of the daycare facility up at the House of Lights building. We may implement that here at Town Hall, but I just wanted you to know that this is something that staff has been fully aware of and in many cases have asked for. So they want to know that when they're coming to work, it's a safe place to be. Also, you might be interested to know that Scarborough Fire Department and EMS, along with all other EMS departments in the state, we are now afforded and have a license to actually do rapid testing. That's limited to certain personnel, public safety, public works, and public safety is police and fire, but you must be symptomatic. So it's not done just if just in case. So you have to be symptomatic. So we're very excited to have that capability in-house to be able to provide that additional level of expediency and comfort to our staff. Those are free of charge, made available through Maine EMS, and those will be good as long as supplies last. I believe it's the same program that members of the public can access through Walgreens pharmacies, but we have the capability of doing it right here. A couple other points of interest. I've had the occasion to speak to a couple of councilors, and I mentioned it to the rest of council and the public. Today, there was a property that came on the market that I'm interested in exploring further and pursuing potentially. This is the Masonic Lodge. It's a former Grange Hall down in Dunston. It shares kind of the parking lot with Dunston Fire Station and sits in front of the Historical Society. That's a property that appears on our historic list. And so we have already designated it as important and historically significant. It also, interestingly, does qualify for use of our land bond funds, which the voters did replenish about a year ago. So I'll be communicating more directly out to council tomorrow and looking for your direct feedback. Real estate it's time sensitive. So I'm interested in at least exploring this. I can't do anything more than perhaps negotiate the terms of the deal and a purchase or sale to present to the council. But I think this is an opportunity that we really need to explore. First, to protect our existing interests there. I guess secondly, the historic nature. And third, I think there's the potential for community use right away as a community meeting space. And it could serve potentially a senior population as well. So for all those reasons, I'd like to pursue it just to see if it makes sense. And I'll be reporting back to you in detail tomorrow. A few last things. Pleased to announce that the Finance Department, the Town of Scarborough, has, for the 15th consecutive year, received a GFOA award. It's a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is a big deal, and Ruth and her staff have obviously are very focused on those requirements, and it should give us all some comfort that they do such a very good job for us. A couple of highlights, hopefully good things here. Holiday festivities, things are different obviously, but we don't want to throw away all traditions. You might have noticed on your way in, the ballot box has been repurposed and we'll be receiving letters to Santa starting today through December 9th. Community Services will be doing some publicity around that. On December 5th, we'll have a virtual drive-through with Santa. He'll be right at the front entrance of the high school. There'll be a route of traffic, and so you'll be able to do a drive-by and see Santa. And then that night there'll be a virtual tree lighting at 6 p.m. So no public in attendance, but we'll do it virtually. So we're trying to keep, hold those traditions, but do it in a safe way. And last thing, just to mention to council, kind of housekeeping, December workshops. Your next meeting is December 2nd. We'll be hosting, having a 1-hour workshop. It will be split between Maine Water reporting to the council and to residents about a potential rate increase that they're contemplating. And our town assessor would like to get back to you and provide the details of his proposal as to how in-house he'll be doing revaluations going forward. So I think we can accomplish both those things in an hour. And then of course, you've just set a 2-hour workshop for either the 9th or the 16th.
I'm going to go with the 9th. Let's go with the 9th.
With the 9th. So that means potentially we have the 16th open. We may all welcome that after all of these different sessions. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm available for questions.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Tom? Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I know Mr. Hall reached out to me when this property came on the market. I don't know if you folks are familiar with it at all. I think that given its location on Route 1 and the fact that it has been used in the not that recent past for, I think, bean suppers and whatever, I think it makes all the sense in the world. And also, well, and let me back up. I'm also the liaison to historic preservation. So I really, really would like to see us pursue that property. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Tom.
Certainly.
Jay, I'm trying to demote you, but I think once you make somebody a panelist, I can't put you back in the audience. So you might have to log back on, Jay. Don't take this personally. Any others for Tom? Okay. With that, we are on to order number 2105. It's a 7 p.m. public hearing only on the new request for the following marijuana establishment licenses. And a final approval is scheduled for Wednesday, December 2nd. Nappy Farms, located at 165-2 Rod Road, for a medical marijuana cultivation facility. And Jesse Bell Farms, located at 165-2 Rod Road, for a medical marijuana cultivation facility. And Green Trap LLC, located at 10 Snow Canning Road, for an adult use marijuana cultivation facility. Is Liam with us?
He is in his office, so he can join virtually if you let him in.
He has raised his hand. If you were here for this public hearing, I'm just going to have the assistant manager speak to both these items, and then I will allow members of the public to speak. Liam, go ahead.
How about now? Am I
in? Do you need a camera, Liam? Are you good? Are you good like this?
I'm good. No camera.
Okay.
So just for the council's benefit, this is effectively number 25, 26, and 27 for marijuana licenses in town, subject to your approval. The 2 medical cultivation licenses, again, this is a new facility for us. We plan on touring this at the end of the week. We've already arranged that with the applicants, and I believe we'll have one of the members of council join us. Just briefly on the additional license for adult use cultivation at 10 Snow Canning Road. This is the space that this license is for actually is already licensed as medical cultivators. We have 3 individual cultivators that were previously licensed. The only reason why I reference that is because it's not actually an expansion of cultivation space in town or that facility. It's just it's an existing license holder, or 3 license holders in this case, making the migration to adult use or proposing to. So just a point of clarification there.
Thank you, sir. Any members of the public like, Councilor Gleisting?
If it's not my turn, if you want to go to the public first, that's fine.
Was it a question for Liam? It might make sense if you ask it.
Yes, I'm trying to understand. I don't remember exactly from the ordinance when we get paid the licensing fees. Is that when they apply?
We receive an application fee when they apply, and then upon granting the license is when before they can actually be handed the piece of paper with the license, they have to pay their license fee.
So do you have a total so far, dollar total of what that has come to for what we've done so far? I mean, I think one of the things that we were always going to try to understand is how much of staff resource was this really taking up? I guess it's a big rush right now, so maybe it's not a big deal in the future, but you know, this is a big item every single meeting, and you guys are going out, you're visiting, you know, we're getting letters about odor, et cetera. So I'm just wondering what we have netted so far. And I so apologize, Liam, for not asking us. If you don't have that information right now, that's totally fine. We can, you know, get it later, but I'd really like to know.
41,000 to date.
And are you guys in any way tracking your hours that you're spending on this?
Beyond anecdotal, we're not. Short answer is no, Councillor Gleistein. We're not keeping an active tracking of our hours.
Okay, and it's new. I mean, it's not like you won't get speedier, you know, as the process goes forward, but okay, thanks.
Thank you. I have a process question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Or a process clarification, if you could. Before you start the public hearing, could you please just explain to the public what a public hearing is? This topic has a lot of people that come to do a statement for the first time that maybe not fully understand the process. That we do listen to the public, but this is not a dialogue with the town council. This is a forum for them to express any concerns or anything, but it's not an engagement with the council. I was just wondering if you could clarify that.
Yeah,
please.
sure. I think you said it pretty well. I think after this comment, I'll essentially invite anybody that wants to. You need to come up to the microphone and just state your name and your address. And you have a 3-minute time limit, which we're quite liberal on, so you can take slightly more if you need to. And it is just a public hearing, so we do sit and listen to you. So although we have masks on our face and we might not have much expression, we are trying to hear your input. So yes, thank you. So with that, is anybody in the audience like to speak to this? If you just go, actually, you're right, I should actually call on you. So I'm gonna go with you first, yep, and then the gentleman in front of me, you can go next. Yeah, just state your name and address, please, yep.
Denise Hamilton, 167 Two Rod Road. It's for the 165 Two Rod Road applicants. Since Santino has moved in there, we haven't had a problem with him per se. With the business though, we do have a problem with the odor. It has gotten a little better in the last year, but it's still really bad. We run an in-home business, which we had to jump through hoops to get 6 years ago. And when we have a customer come in, or whether they're coming in to pick something up or drop off a vehicle, and we have individuals, we have companies, we have police departments, and the first words out of their mouth are, got someone growing pot pretty close, don't you? It's a little embarrassing. You know, like I said, we haven't had a problem with them as individuals, but the odor is a problem. So I don't know I know there is odor mitigation as part of the ordinance. I had come to several of the meetings back in the winter before the shutdown. So I don't know where things stood after that, because it kind of got lost, you know, but I don't know what additional improvements are being made. But I do want to commend him on cleaning up the property since he took it over. It's nice having a clean land next door now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Wall. I live at 4 Kennebago. It's right around the corner. So there's a lot of kids in the area. There's a street there. It's just about 13 or 14 houses or so, and we're concerned what's going on over there. We found that at least I personally see a lot of activity over there, and it's not just the activity that scares me, but I see cars coming out of there. They're peeling out and making lots of noise and stuff. It's one of the I know the police have been down in that area before. I don't know what the activity is about, but they've been there, and it's concerning to me. I have 2 of my own children that live with me, and one that's gone out of the house, and I just don't feel like it's a it's more of, I'm concerned for safety, because with drugs comes other things. I know it's medicinal and it says all that stuff on there, but I feel like there's more activity there than there should be. I mean, taking little scooters and stuff up and down the street all the time, and no plates on them or anything. And it's just, I feel like it's, you know, it's not safe. So, I mean, I don't really have much else to say, but I just want you to know that I'm concerned for that. And the smell also is very concerning. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any others? Gentleman in the back. Just state your name and address to get started.
It's Santino Nappi of 165 Two Rod Road. And I just want to start saying, when I got this going initially, this property was light industrial. I think since you guys have changed it to a rural farm overlay, which still accepts cannabis. I believe you guys wanted to have access to Holmes Road, but we were grandfathered and we met the moratorium. We've done everything in our power to be great neighbors to the Hamiltons. I have tremendously, you know, changed that property. I try to be mindful of the smell. We've put in a carbon mitigation system. I don't believe it's a problem anymore. And Friday, when you guys are there, you can see for yourselves, but we are actually at a harvest. Sorry about the mask. We are harvesting next week. So we are at the peak of bloom. And you would see if there was an issue with the smell, you would clearly see that. So I can prove to you that there is no problem with that going forward. We did have an issue with it. And during the beginning of this, we weren't even told to get the carbon mitigation system in. So we weren't really, this was new to us. We are new growers here. We were born and raised across the street. I'd like to add to, I've been a resident of this street for 30 years, as well as my partner, Jesse. Born and raised next door, we're best friends. So for us, this is our life, my livelihood. I put everything into this property. I actually quit a job that I ran for 10 years, street sweeping, doing environmental work just to pursue this. I made sure I spoke with Brian Longstaff, Mr. Jim Butler. I've asked every question, done everything. I got a Knox box. I put a $10,000 fence up. I've got a major insurance policy. I mean, I don't know what more I can do to appease the neighbors. As far as the travel or the concerns with the traffic, I do have a small scooter that I ride. It's actually registered and insured. So I don't know what the problem is with that. My family does live across the street. We were born and raised next to Beach Ridge Speedway. So we might've grown up a little rough or whatever you want to call us. You know, we've raised hell over the years, I guess, but I have proven that I can be responsible and respectful and conduct this business professionally. And that is all I'm looking to do. I don't want no trouble with the Hamiltons or my neighbors or anyone in the area. And it just really upsets me that I'm at this point and I've put everything into this. This means everything to me. And I'll do anything in my power to make sure that this business continues. And if there's anything I can do, I would absolutely address it. I know my brother has a Camaro that he's done burnouts with, and I yell at him, I bitch at him. I've even told his little roommate over there, who's Jake Murray, his mother's Mary Pearson, the chief of police. They raise hell. You know, they done burnouts. I bitch about it. Excuse me. I'm sorry for my swearing, but I'm very worked up about this. I don't know what more I can do. That is not related to me. I try not to even go over there. I actually don't even have patients come to my home because I respect the neighborhood so much. I meet my patients away from my home. I have very low foot traffic at this house. I try to keep a very discreet, low profile. And I just ask that, you know, I just get treated fairly. And I don't know what more I can do, but I know the smell was a problem. We've actually phased out a couple strains, specifically GMO, which is a very potent, pungent strain. And I phased that out because I know that I cannot grow those type of strains in this area. So we, alongside with the carbon mitigation, I don't think you will have a problem with us with that. If there's anything I can do though, please let me know because I'm here to stay and this means the world to me. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Oh, actually, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sorry. Thank you.
I'm Jamie Bell. I live at 166 Two Rod Road, so it's directly across the street. I've lived there for 30 years. Jesse Bell is my son, who's partners with Santino. In the time that we've lived there, the house to my right has run 3 businesses out of their house. The house that they're now growing was doing a piano repair business out of there. Across the street, Hamiltons are running 2 businesses out of their property. And down the street, there are 2 other houses in the neighborhood that are running welding and stock car fabrication businesses. So to say that these guys are bringing a lot of traffic, I don't think it's a really fair statement. If you looked at the traffic in and out of their driveway versus some of the others, I think you'd find it would be quite the opposite. As far as the smell goes, it was pretty bad when they got started.
But in the last 6 months, there'll be a day when somebody leaves something open, you can smell it. Other than that, you can't smell it anymore. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name's Samantha Nappy. I'm actually Santino Nappy's twin sister. And I just want to be here as an advocate to him to just continue to say what my brother has done to go above and beyond to be in compliance with the town of Scarborough. Our family has lived at 162 True Rod Road for over 30 years. I have seen my brother go through a significant amount of anxiety to continue to appeal to everyone surrounding us. Kennebago, for example, that was a disturbance of its own to my family. You know, this subdivision going in what we consider to be a rural farming zoned area. And like I said, I have watched my twin brother go above and beyond, go through so much anxiety to make sure that he adheres to very strict guidelines. I have been by his side throughout this whole thing. I have stood by him. I will continuously stand by him. It's disheartening to hear people talk about things like scooters when we have our whole lives listened to gunshots our whole lives, Beechridge Speedway, burnouts. Like, this is something that we have kind of grown up and been raised around. We are the kind of kids that do like dirt bikes and four-wheelers, but we were kids. We are 30-year-old adults here trying to operate a business in the town of Scarborough. I just do want to truly, please, Kennebago residents, Scarborough residents, my brother is a gentleman. He is a kind person. He is a businessman, and he is just trying to operate his small business, a very small business in comparison to some very large operations in Scarborough. He is a very humble man. He is a very kind man. And I really hope that the residents at Kennebago, Denise, my brother means the world to me, and I stand by him and his business 100%. I'm going to say the word hard ass. That's how I am to him. I'm his twin, and I have seen him go through some hard times, and he has genuinely put his heart and soul into this. He has a big heart, and he will do anything to make sure that the residents around him feel safe and are okay. We have a new gentleman, Mishu, building a house right across the street from my family's home. Before he even bought that property, he confronted him and asked if he was okay with what he was doing. Even though he does have the legal right to do what he's doing, he still felt the need. He still felt the need to ask him that, is this okay with you? And he did say, of course, this is okay. Like I said, I just want to continue to let the residents know of Kennebago, Denise, my brother is a gentleman. My brother is a kind man, and my brother will do anything he can to assure that he is in compliance with the town's rules and regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mishu, is that Jacob's house that's going across this? Okay. Any other public comments? Okay, with that, I'll close the, actually, let me double check online. Excuse me 1 second.
Can I just add one more comment?
Sure, yep.
In response, Denise from 167 True Rod Road again. In response to the Kennebago comments, it is not Santino doing the burnouts. It's not his household doing the burnouts. As he commented, it's over to his brother doing the burnouts all the time. They've got loud vehicles leaving the driveway. You can drive down there and you'll see the burnouts in front of their house in their driveway, but it's not Santino. So I do want to, and we're right there. We can see his house. So I can say with 100% certainty, it's not their house. So.
No, we don't want to debate each other back and forth. Yeah. Santino, get your brother up here next week. I'm going to scold him. Okay. With that, this was a public hearing only, so we take action on this on December 4th. So if you were here only for this public hearing, I welcome you to, you may leave. You don't have to sit for the rest of the meeting if you don't want to, so I can pause if you choose to empty out, and we will take action on this in 2 weeks. December 2nd, I apologize.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, we are now on to order number 20088. It's the second reading on the proposed amendment to the zoning map related to the rezoning of Muzzy Road. And Liam did, excuse me, I'm sorry, Jay, did you, oh, I'm sorry, this is property owner initiated, and I think, I don't know if Steve, is he in here? I don't think he is. Okay, so I think with that, I think I'm just going to, any members of the public want to speak on this? Okay, so I think I'll just take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Councillor Gleisten?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, my brain isn't really working. So we had first reading, public hearing, and now this is second reading on this?
Yeah, this, yes, correct. Yep.
Okay. And so Jay, did we get, I mean, there's really only, you know, one business that's right across the street from it. Did you get any feedback on this at all from anybody via email or anything else? Or has this just been, you know, pretty much folks are satisfied with this?
We have not received any public, we have not received any public comment on it.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Johnson?
This is just second reading, no action, correct?
No, this is the whole enchilada.
This is.
Second reading is the last thing we do on it. Yep.
Okay. Then I have a comment on this, just so for the record. I value our zoning in the town of Scarborough. I feel that we amend it too loosely and too often. And in my personal opinion, without a compelling reason to change a zoning, I will not support it. Thank you.
Any others? No, I guess my comment is, I think we have a compelling reason. I believe the property owner is just trying to use it in a particular way that's not currently allowed, and we're trying to revert back. So I support it for that reason. Councillor Hamlin?
Yeah, I do share a growing sense of discomfort about exactly how, and I know there's a history here, so there are a lot of mitigating factors and are deciding on this question. But it does seem a little curious to me that we go through the process of the long range planning committee and they say things like, you'll better watch out for creep, and we need to be concerned about the general character and all of these other questions. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. So I also think that it. And I'm sure the applicants wouldn't say this, but it does seem like it should be a little bit tougher to get changes like this when we're going between industrial zone and an area that's bordering other business centers and also residential. So I'm just kind of wrestling with it, and I think we'll have opportunities for continuing discussion, but it is curious and a question for me.
Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, when this came before long range planning, my concern at that point was the so-called creep of the industrial line. However, listening to there was a robust conversation in long range planning regarding that. And they convinced me that this would make sense. I know I drive by it just about every day. Right now, it's a bunch of trailers just parked there, which they can do. I just as soon see an improvement to this. I think that the placement of it makes sense. And as I said, long range planning committee convinced me in our discussions that this would make sense to do this. So just so you'll know.
Okay, any others? Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I support this as well. And the way I look at it is they're bordering the industrial zone on one side and B3 on the other. They're just choosing, I want to be part of this zone because there's something that they're able to do with my immediate neighbors that I can't do. And I have an opportunity to leverage my investment in the property. So I do support this. And in general, I don't think we should be making, nonsensical changes to zoning, but this one makes sense, I think. So I do support it.
Councilor Gleisten?
And I think this is one where we didn't have a good record of how it ended up what it is right now. Am I remembering that correctly, Tom?
I think we had a record. The town actually made some changes to the area and put it in the B3 zone. So it was originally industrial. Is that correct, Jay? I can't recall all the particulars, but I think that was part of a larger set of line zone changes, if you will. And I know there were discussions at the time with the property owner, who's still the same current property owner, about that issue and his interest in potentially going back. And sure enough, here he is in front of us.
Thank you. Any others? Councilor Anderson?
I just want to agree with what Councilor Clucci said. Based on my assessment and understanding of the situation, it does seem like this particular situation feels like an opportunity to make the change. But I do agree with what both Councilor Hamel and Councilor Johnson said too, in terms of just trying to make sure that we figure out a good way to manage these if they continue to come in, to make sure we understand, what the risk might be, across the zoning right now. Is this something that, we need to be thinking about in terms of, especially when they're free, is there going to be a bigger need? And is this kind of opening a door for more requests coming in?
Thank you. Tody, you want to call the vote?
Yes. Councilor Pucci?
Yes.
Councilor Gleisten? Councilor Gleisten?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Councilor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
No.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, on to new business. Order number 20016 is the first reading and refer to the planning board on the proposed amendment to chapter 405, the town of Scarborough zoning ordinance, section 20. Oh, no, 30. XXC? What is it?
20C.
20C. Okay, I was looking at C like as a Roman numeral. Okay, thank you. 20C. It's not so easy doing this all on the fly all the time. All right. Crossroads Plan Development District, otherwise known as the CPD. Number 1, basic standards. Letter B, permitted use. This is initiated by the property owners. So before I put this on the floor, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Bacon, I believe. Are you presenting, Dan, or is it Peter? Okay. Did you want me to share what I have on my laptop?
That would be great.
Okay.
Hey, Paul. When
Yep.
you can't see speakers. Normally, this cameras were working where we could see the speakers, but.
Oh, it's a good point. I think maybe we can ask the guys in the.
Just so you know.
Yeah, it's a good point. Just bear with me, guys. 1 second. I just have to pull this up.
It's not going to matter because you're sharing screen.
What? Yeah, it's true. It won't necessarily. Oops. Yep. Okay. Let's see you guys. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me there.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan Bacon here with Crossroads Holdings, LLC, joined with Peter Michaud here on behalf of the Downs. And thanks for putting this on your agenda this evening. To provide a little bit of background, I know there's a new counselor and not all the counselors are living and breathing the Downs like we are. So the Innovation District is a specific area in the Crossroads Plan Development District. And we're really proud and excited about the level of activity we've seen already in the district around kind of light industrial, commercial, economic development. So if you go to the next slide, just to provide that quick overview, This is a specific limited area. It's in the northern part of the Downs in the Crossroads zone, close to Payne Road. It's also very close to exit 42 in the highway system. So it's really the location and the part of the community built for the heavier truck traffic and regional logistics. And that's been attracting a lot of light industrial end users to this part of the project. And we're off to a great start with the Innovation District in general. I think as we reported to you a few months ago, we have about 250,000 square feet of light industrial or commercial space that's either complete, it's underway, or it's in permitting. So there's a lot of great positive activity there. And we're finding the design of the project is really a model. So we have lots that are flexible in size, or they can be combined, or not to meet specific needs. It's shovel ready with the help of the council and the planning board through the permitting process. And it's the mix of light industrial is really desirable. So we're seeing a lot of activity, and we're hitting some key kind of market sectors that want to be in Scarborough, want to be in this location, want to be in the region, or want to stay but need to grow. So it's almost perfect. What would make it perfect is a gap we're seeing is there is some demand for warehouse facilities, distribution facilities that can really co-locate well with the activity in the Innovation District. So Peter's our economic specialist. He's going to jump up and kind of talk about the trends that are driving that interest. And then I'll kind of wrap up with the specific changes.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening. First of all, welcome back, John, Jean Marie, and welcome to John Anderson from the Crossroads group. Thanks for volunteering your time for the town. This slide here, what we're really meaning to do, some of you folks saw this during our CEA update, and simply put, we just want to reset the table. There's a reason why we're bringing this to your attention. There's a macro shift going on in the commercial world, driven by e-commerce, driven by the effects of COVID. But quite frankly, this shift was happening pre-COVID. So this isn't just a COVID-related thing. I don't think we'd necessarily knee-jerk just for COVID. This was plenty before that, but the COVID piece has really impacted it. Essentially, what's happening with e-commerce is businesses' supply chains can't flex quick enough to feed, to keep up with the demand from e-commerce in the food business, in the fresh food business, as well in dry goods. And what's happening is there's a much larger interest in localizing food for e-commerce service. So you can get home delivery as an example. And we're getting a lot of calls for this. So the demand has shifted macroly and will continue to shift. I suspect we're on the maybe 20-yard line of this event. Just kind of to put this in perspective, I was looking at this. Paul, can you just go back to that, please?
Yep, sorry. Yep.
That's okay. Thank you. That's my tip. That's my tip to move on. But here's my point. You know, if you look at this, we've got 9 categories, 9 business platforms listed. 2 of them with green arrows, right? Of those 9 categories, one of our approved zones, or approved uses, excuse me, have a green arrow. So 2 in total. So we've got about a 12% chance of success, just to do some quick math for you. So we'd appreciate any support, consideration you folks could have, and welcome to the new counselor. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Just to kind of jump into the specifics. So it's a pretty simple amendment. Warehouse and distribution facilities are actually 2 different permitted uses that are proposed to be added. They're allowed in a variety of industrial zones, other industrial zones in town. And to ensure it continues to be kind of that mixed type of district, in working with the Long Range Planning Committee, we've added a kind of a ceiling on these uses of 30% of the land area can be dedicated to these particular uses so that it continues to be a balanced light industrial zone. We reviewed this with Long Range Planning back in October. They provided a positive endorsement of the proposal and worked with Jay on the specific language. And also, it is uses that are in the town's comprehensive plan for this particular zone. So just to quickly summarize, I think on the last slide, it's, as we mentioned, it's a key amendment right now, given the world we live in, the market demand, and also a lot of the businesses in Greater Portland that need this to grow and survive. It's will be complementary, and we think it's in really the right location for the project, but also the town in terms of having direct access to the highway to not disrupt other areas of town with truck traffic. It's ideally located similar to the distribution area off of Ginn Road, which is right down the street. That's right at exit 42. So with that, I'll wrap up. We're happy to answer questions if the council has any.
Thank you. So before I put this on the floor amongst us, I think we should put some Q&A with the presenters if anybody has any. Mr. Michaud, I'll start with one of my questions. I think one of the selling points of the Downs is the increased captured value. And when I hear distribution centers, I don't think as much increased captured value. Can you speak to that a bit? Because I'm concerned that 30% of the innovation district being warehousing would actually affect, quote, our bottom line with the increased value. So,
sure. It's our uses will be multiple uses. So for example, we've got a very significant company today that's interested in coming. They want to come in as to start with distribution to be able to react to the marketplace, but they also have thoughts of bringing production lines in as they grow their business. So a lot of times when you have production and distribution, you'll go build a core and shell building, and then you'll take that facility and you'll bolt on additional manufacturing as you grow your business. So it's a staged growth. So to my thought on it is there's a lot of property, there's a lot of intellectual property, there's a lot of technology in these distribution centers today. There's robotics, there's all these kind of things. We're not talking about an Amazon kind of deal. We're talking about heartbeat of local businesses and need for distribution. So from a valuation point of view, I'd take a half a loaf of bread, work toward the full loaf of bread, if you would.
Good. Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, I've got just a general question. I mean, I understand the business reasons for this and our need to be flexible. But I remember we spent a lot of time talking about the innovation district and that this was going to be biotech and we're going to be incubator businesses. And now well, I guess not, the market has changed. We'll blame it on COVID. And, but we're responding to market demand and, here goes light industrial. And oh, by the way, it's not only going to be in the innovation district, it's going to be right on the corner of Payne Road and the entrance to the Downs. So, welcome to the Downs. Here's warehousing and distribution. So, I mean, I just get a little, I'm open to being flexible about this, but is it always just, we wave a magic wand and market demand makes it okay? I don't know. It's just a feeling that I get.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a couple comments in there. One is maybe referring to the map that you saw, Councilor Hamel, is the inclusionary area does go out to Payne Road, but the innovation district does not. So the way the language is written is out on Payne Road, there would not be the ability under the current approvals to have that use, light industrial or distribution out on the corner. That is earmarked for retail for other commercial uses, just to kind of clarify that.
The other green arrow.
The other green arrow. The other green arrow. And back to kind of the types of users that are interested in warehouse, biotech actually is one that needs a warehousing component in the shorter term that Peter was referring to that can clearly lead to lab space, to office space, to other space. So that is a key intent with warehousing, is to induce the things I think that you're speaking of in the innovation district to happen within the innovation district, but they demand a warehouse component either early in their process.
And I did have one follow-up, if I may, just quickly, Dan, and I think you can maybe help me with this as well, but you suggested some wording changes to the zoning that indicate that it's limited to 30%. Could you talk to that for a minute? 30% of what? And you have sort of two cases of where that would apply. The 30% would apply differently.
Yeah, I'm happy to. 30% of the land area within the innovation district as approved. And in working with Jay and his team, we provided language to clarify with when there's, say, a standalone warehouse, you account the entire lot that the warehouse is on. Okay. If it's part of a mixed use site where it's still a principal use, say it's what we just described, it's a third warehouse, a third biotech, a third office, we count a third of that land area, not the entire lot.
Great.
That makes sense.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Councilor Katarina and then Councilor Gleisting, and I'll just keep going.
Actually, Dawn just asked the question because I wanted to make sure Dan explained that. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Gleisting and then Councilor Johnson.
Yes, so I wanted to pick up, I had two questions I wanted to pick up on that 30%. How did you choose that number 30%? Where might that head? Is it strict enough that you would have to come back in front of the council if you want that to be 50%, or is it flexibly written where you can flex that? So just trying to understand that a little better, that 30%, where that number came from and what the ramifications are.
Yeah, so there's a certain amount of the innovation district that's spoken for, and that's right now about 25 to 30%. And then we have the remaining area of the innovation district where there's some interest by warehouse and distribution, but there's a lot of interest by other end users. So we wanted to provide room for growth for both. And some of the warehouse facilities that may have multiple activities or need larger floor areas take up larger, building area. So we wanted to provide for that capacity. So that's why we ended up at 30%, is to allow some larger footprint buildings, but also allow mixed growth moving forward.
Okay, just again, it's 30% based on area, right?
It's based on land area, yes. So it includes the building and the parking and the site that would be dedicated to either of those uses.
Okay, thanks. And so my other question, Dan, is so the truck traffic, is that going to come, so two directions, is that primarily going to be on Payne Road, or is there a way that these trucks can come off of Higas Parkway? Or will they and go through the Crossroads area, or will they all have to come and go on Payne Road?
The intent is that the vast majority of truck traffic goes to Payne Road, and it's the vast majority from Payne Road wants to be on the highway for the distribution and the trucking activities. The design of the project is to, right now, there's not a connection to Higas Parkway, and in the future, the connection will be circuitous and not designed for trucks. So the intent is we've designed Innovation Way and Scarborough Downs Road up to Payne Road for trucks. So the project's already designed to dictate that movement and not encourage truck traffic to the other ends of the project.
It's a pretty short way if they're coming from the highway and going in from the interstate, but if they're coming from 295, then the trucks would be coming up, what we'd call kind of Main Mall Road that turns into Payne Road. Is that right, Dan?
They can go that way, correct? But you also, from an efficiency standpoint, they likely would stay on the turnpike and get off the exit from 295.
Right, like if they're coming from Augusta or something like that, they'd be on 295. Yeah.
Councilor Gleising, what these truck companies today, these routing companies, all running on GPSs, and they avoid stoplights. They won't be coming that way. They'll be routed out around. And the other thing I did miss in my economic
hit was, you know, think about, Paul, you brought up a good point about valuations and so on. And I do think, though, that the vehicles that would be left in some of these facilities and the registration values and so on would be very, very lucrative to the town. I missed that, sorry.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson, did you have a hand here, Councilor Johnson? And then Councilor Anderson, I believe afterwards, did you have a question? Yep. So Councilor Johnson and Councilor Anderson.
I had a question for Jay, if I could. Is that allowed?
Anything's allowed. Go for it.
Jay, I was just wondering if you could just walk through the process in a zone district that determines permitted uses. I mean, what's the process that goes into that? Because there's a lot of uses, and we designate certain uses as permitted in a zone. So what goes into that, and why was this not in the original?
Looks like.
Okay.
Let me speak to it because I was here in the formative stages, and Dan Bacon knows this all too well. He was really the chief author of the Crossroads District.
I should have asked him.
Which is one of our newest ones. But the concern, or I'll say historically, the aversion toward these types of uses, warehouse and distribution, really started with the HP zone right next door. We didn't want that area to be, you know, a sea of warehouse and distribution. We thought that would really squander what is an opportunity for other types of higher value development. You know, that was frankly decades ago when that vision was first thought. And it logistically would make a lot of sense. It's right on the exit, left to its own devices. That probably would have happened to some extent. So there was a bit of a firewall built originally with the HP zone. Over the years, we've moderated that and allowed a lot of flexibility in HP zone. We haven't crossed that line. And in the discussions around forming the Crossroads District and the permitted uses, I think that was clearly influenced by the HP zone next door. That was my recollection. Just on a personal note, I had some reservations initially, but I have a level of comfort given the fact that they're limiting themselves in terms of how much can actually happen. And so I think it's potentially a proposal that will work well.
Thank you for that, I think. So back to the 30%, what does that mean? How does that translate into number of businesses? How many warehouse distribution centers are going to be in the innovation district now? Or could be? Because we are driven by market demand in this town. So what's the end game here at 30%? What's that mean?
So it's land area, and
there's lots on that land area, right? So how many lots would be involved in a 30% land area for distribution?
So in the innovation district right now, there's about 65 acres of development area. So 30% of that's around 20 acres. That would be the ceiling of land area that could carry warehouse and distribution. That's the max.
Yeah. The math, but Councilor Johnson, the reality is I think it could be 1, it could be 6. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's that variable, but when we say it could be 1, it could be, you know.
Right. So we're not looking at currently defined lots.
No.
Right. We're looking at open land that is 30% that could be 1 lot or 6 lots.
I mean, one could argue it could be whatever fills up first.
Yeah.
You know, I just
Amazon. Come on.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to go do Amazon. But yeah, but I don't. We're just trying to react to a really not a micro shift, a macro shift. This is going on long before COVID. And some of these organizations that are doing the PPE equipment, they're not in trouble with production. They're in trouble with warehousing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Anderson, and then Councilor Gleistein.
I have a different question. I don't know if Councilor Gleistein or Councilor Hamill had a follow-up to Don's question, if they want to go first, or if I'm okay to ask my separate question. Okay.
I'm losing track.
So my question, and again, this comes from just recently reviewing our draft comprehensive plan. There's a lot in there that talks about compatibility and scale and design. And I just want to understand from you guys what does this mean from compatibility and scale and design for the innovation district and for the Downs in general? Because when I think of warehousing and distribution centers, I just naturally think of a bunch of eyesores. And so I just want to hear from you guys in terms of what does this actually mean in terms of scale and design?
Sure. In the Innovation District, as part of our approvals, Councilor Anderson, we actually moved forward with specific design requirements for all buildings, particularly ones that front the public street. There's higher standards than the ones that are on what we call backlots that are tucked more out of sight. So I think if you drive out there, you see already sort of the success of those standards where regardless of what's happening in the building, and there's already some uses in there that have what I would call kind of open floor plan. I mean, you could walk through it and you could call it a warehouse. But there's activities in there that aren't warehousing, but it has that kind of scale. The buildings are quite attractive. And the same would be true whether it's a large building that has warehousing or a large building that has assembly or manufacturing or a large building that has some other permitted use. So we're very conscious of that, and that's part of the reason we established design standards for the project is we wanted to be that kind of project that has character, that's mixed, that if people want to locate their business and they want to be next to a business that has a similar design of similar level of design and sort of visual interest. So we think the way it's set up is kind of works perfectly to address the concern that you might have. If that answers your question.
Yep, thank you.
Councilor Gleason, did you still have your hand up or?
Yeah, my question's for Peter. So Peter, I think you said that you've got, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you've got kind of a sure thing already. Is that right?
No. What I'm signaling is what we're hearing from interest levels. You know, the phone calls we're fielding and from our real estate brokers and so on.
Okay. And so from the types of things you're hearing, like, you know, how many trucks do you think that we'd be seeing going in and out of the Innovation District a day?
I mean, it really depends on the usage.
Right, but just with what the interest that's been shown.
The interest would be on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 4. 10 being the highest, 10 being, you know, problematic. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and I think there's some specific end users that are swirling around the region that need kind of specialty warehousing space that don't actually do a lot of, there's not a lot of movement of goods. An example of that would be cold storage. There's been a lot in the news around cold storage in Portland. Obviously seafood is a growing industry. That's a fairly sophisticated warehouse that needs multiple homes in the region. And they're not in and out like an Amazon or these other facilities that maybe you're imagining. It's more about the storage and occasional truck traffic. And so that's maybe on the low end. On the mid end is kind of medical or biotech where they need storage and it's more occasional truck traffic or intermittent truck traffic, not day in and day out. So that's the kind of the more local regional end users we've heard about. And they're really kind of bolstering the regional economy. They're not these big corporations coming in from other parts of the country.
And so Dan, just to follow up on that, so if they don't come to Scarborough, where are they going to go? What is the competition area?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's Westbrook and Saco are the two most immediate neighbors. But in general, in the region, there's just a lack of light industrial space. So it's not necessarily without, say, some allowance here, it's not necessarily easy for them to find a home where they want to locate. like close to 95, close to 295. So that's, I think that's a regional problem right now with having space available under zoning.
And so you guys are zoned for the, you know, to do, I think all the marijuana that we're allowed to do, the manufacturing, the cultivation, et cetera. And so with anything that, you know, that you're looking at, do you think there's going to be odor issues? You know, because we're already having odor issues. You mentioned seafood. You know, are you anticipating any kind of an environmental change that would happen with this zoning change?
Anything that we've seen so far of interest, Councilor Gleisten, would be prepackaged, you know, backpack sealed stuff. So what you're referring to would be more manufacturing, that kind of stuff, which we haven't really had interest in. I guess it's possible, but at the end of the day, when you think about distribution and storage, you're talking about shelf stable and or refrigerated prepackaged foods that have no odor.
Okay, thank you.
Just a point of clarification, and this is an embarrassing question, but the marijuana cultivation is allowed in the innovation district, correct?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a?
I was thinking earlier how boring this is compared to the conversation before, but well, that's what you anyways, go ahead.
Right. No, I want to challenge that because I just read the CPD and it's manufacturing and testing, but not cultivation.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there a, I guess to Mr. Bacon, is there a way that we can guard against Amazon coming in? Because I think that would be right. So I don't want, like, I think, for instance, can you get more granular in saying, you know, the 30% can't be one tenant, or, you know, is there a way to guard? Because I mean, the way it's written, you could back up the truck and have a 20-acre Amazon facility, right? So is there a way, I guess I'm asking you, is there a way to guard against that?
I have an immediate solution for you.
Fair.
And I'm not clear necessarily on what square footage Amazon.
No, I know, but you understand
user.
The nature of the question is, you know, I'll toss this over to Mr. Pucci.
Well, actually, it's a similar point.
Thank you. Good. You make it better than I
what I had. I don't necessarily have a problem with this use being in the innovation district, but I don't want it to overwhelm what you have going on there. And I think the 30% is a decent attempt at trying to restrict it, but I think it's going to be problematic when you kind of chase it down the road a little bit. Because what happens if you own a distribution facility and the 30% is already gone? Can you expand or not? Who makes that determination? I think it's going to create some headaches down the road. It's a good guide to start. But you had talked about a lot of these potential users might have multiple uses. Like they might want to start with manufacturing distribution, but then also start doing some manufacturing or so is there a way that we could go about it with where maybe it's a complementary use, or I'm trying to think through the same thing. What you were saying is I don't necessarily want to take 30% of the innovation district and call it. I want to avoid a big potential user coming in and overwhelming the place. I'd rather have a lot of smaller users or mid-sized users. So I don't have an answer, and I don't even know if that was a question, but I guess those are the thoughts that I was kind of trying to toss around.
I think you just re-articulate exactly what I was saying. I think the way that it's written, you guys would be perfectly within your rights to have one tenant that took up 30% of the innovation district. I believe I'm correct, right? Yeah. So I'm literally asking, I'm not challenging you on that. I'm not saying you're going to do that, but I think what would help us is to understand, can we guard against that in a way that's not restrictive for your operation?
No, I'm just wondering too, if like when you say overwhelm it, you're referring to a building size or you're referring to traffic? Like people refer to Amazon as a concern potentially about traffic volume and ins and outs, because right now we're not capped on building size for any other use. You may have a large manufacturing facility that could be, 30% of footprint of the site, and we wouldn't be before you. So I'm just trying to think through, traffic impacts are often a concern with warehousing facilities of a certain type. Others have low traffic impacts or moderate, not different than anything else that's allowed. So if that's a primary concern, I think we can we have a lot of belts and suspenders around how we go through traffic permitting and that through the planning board and DOT, but that could be, if that's the primary concern, we can look at how to manage that. So I raised that kind of a question to the council.
No, it's a good, I mean, I think so since I asked the question first, I think personally, yes. I think as you spoke to, there's building standards, right? So it might be a large building, but it'll still be a pretty building, right? So okay, right? But I think it's more about the traffic. You know, there's a difference between 5 small users that will have low to moderate traffic and one large user that is going to let it rip, so to speak. So did you
want to follow on that?
Yeah, I was thinking that, I mean, we don't know what we don't know necessarily, right. But we're hearing what you're saying. We have our preferences too, and they're similarly aligned. I think one of the things we've already experienced is, it depends on the style of business and the life cycle of the products that they're storing, right? That drives typically the frequency of truck traffic and so on. To Dan's point, we know traffic's a concern. We're certainly hearing that, have heard that. Keep in mind, I mean, we have an exit in this town. It was designed for this, and we have the optimum spot. You gotta just take a second and really think about the fact that we're less than a quarter of a mile. I agree with Councilor Hamel about not putting something out on that corner that says, welcome to the Downs. It's an heavy industrial use and, go get your marijuana over in the corner or whatever the case may be. We're thinking something quite different. But what we are trying to do, keep in mind, these are businesses we're running and we're trying to capture. I started to say, we've had examples, real live examples that someone would say, gee, I need a 50,000 square foot building for storage right now, and then I'm going to be moving my manufacturing into it. Well, we can't, Tom, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and there's more than one, there's less than 4 that this has happened to, and we can't ring the bell. We say, well, gee, we'd like to do it, but we'll have to go to the council and so on. That's one example. That could be here today, gone tomorrow. It could be back, who knows? So we're just trying to be cognizant. There is a macro shift in the market. E-commerce, is driving this far beyond COVID. Just please understand that. And when you think about e-commerce, don't get hung up on Amazon. By the way, Amazon also has another division, for home food delivery through Whole Foods. And they're going to be testing, they're testing in certain markets right now. I know there's one in Florida, for example, and they're delivering from these facilities with little vans. So you may not even talking about 18-wheelers, frankly. These are home deliveries from these facilities. There's a spectrum out there that we're not thinking, and this zone certainly does not contemplate. I can assure you of.
Any more questions? Councilor Gleisteen? Yeah, then Councilor Hamel after that.
I just want to ask Dan really quickly. When this was developed originally, this zone, was there a consideration to put this in and it was thought better of, or it just wasn't a fit at all? Can you kind of talk about that progression?
Yeah, it wasn't a high priority. When we went through the list of uses in the industrial zones, at that point, it wasn't focused on. I wouldn't call it necessary, and maybe it was an oversight. I mean, it is in the comprehensive plan as a use that could go in this district. But at the time there was, they had just bought the property. There's a lot of excitement about some known end users that we wanted in the innovation district. And those are really kind of focused on to get the innovation district started. So in hindsight, we probably should have stepped back and taken a few more months to think about, okay, what's possible in a few years. But we didn't do that. And we're now here and we're learning, with the zoning, we're learning with the marketplace. And those conversations Peter referred to are real, where there's, I think, businesses that we all would be proud of locating, that are interested in the innovation district, that wouldn't bring just boxes. They would bring other operations. They would bring people. But their immediate need is is more along the lines of warehousing distribution. So
okay, great. Yeah, so it wasn't something you thought about putting in, took out, now need to put it back. It just wasn't considered at the time. Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, this builds on some of the questions that Councilor Anderson and Gleisten have been asking, but I don't mean to really dwell on this, but Dan, in your letter, you mentioned that this zoning amendment's consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, which specifically lists warehousing and distribution facilities as uses to be allowed in the Crossroads district. If we didn't approve this, where would that be allowed in the Crossroads district?
if you did not approve this?
Yeah. What other areas? This is the only area that we would be allowing it if we were to approve this now, right?
Yes, correct.
Innovation districts. Okay.
The innovation, yeah, and it's confusing. We live this language. The innovation district is an area, a specific limited area within the Crossroads district. So it's a name of the business park, it's not a separate zone. So apologize if that's making it confusing, but it's a smaller area of the overall Crossroads zone.
So we allowed it. We've allowed it. I don't know where we allowed it, but then why is it requiring this action then if we've already allowed it?
No, in the comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan from 2006 listed it as it should be included in the Crossroads district. And it isn't as of right now. So that was just the comprehensive plan. It's not the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Are we good? Anybody else? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I will take a motion, please, to put on the floor.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And discussion. Councilor Clucci.
Yeah, this is to send to the planning board, and I'll be interested to see what thoughts they have on the matter. They're certainly a lot closer to these issues than I think we are. But generally, I'm supportive of the use being there. I'm concerned about it being overwhelmed. Maybe if they split the 30% into like so much for primary use, so much for accessory, that might actually help you encourage some of those users to bring other operations here. But I'm sure there's a bunch of other ideas that they could toss around too. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. Any others? Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, I know I haven't asked any questions, but that's because I was part of the long range planning conversation that took place around this. I support it generally. My concerns again were, big truck warehousing or whatever, but I truly believe that, as Mr. Mishu pointed out, you've got a lot of users out there now who are pivoting to the general population due to the pandemic, and I don't think it's going to go away after the pandemic, who are interested in having, maybe deliveries to the door. Or I was pretty excited about the possibilities for local businesses, i.e., I know there's a bad thing wrapped with seafood, but there's a need for distributing seafood, agriculture. I mean, we're trying to be a farm to table type of a community for warehousing or quick turnaround potentially on some of that, whatever. So I see this as a positive, but I absolutely understand the concerns of other counselors. And as Mr. Clucci pointed out, this will be going to the planning board, and they have a lot of experience, obviously, with the Downs in the Innovation District. So I look forward to seeing, how it returns to us.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Oh, it will come back favorable. No, I think the Innovation District is a great area for this. Unfortunately, it's just not zoned that way. And my stance on zoning is without a compelling reason, I just can't support the zone change. But as councilors, again, we just left a workshop with comprehensive plan that's been injected in this conversation 4 times. Just make a note of it. That's why that document's very important. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any others? Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I just have, a couple comments. So first, I think this sounds relatively reasonable as a standalone request. But I thought initially when this came forward back in September, there was another zoning amendment that was also being asked for around restaurants and allowing for drive-ins, and I'm not sure where that is at this point. I just feel like we should kind of understand all of these amendments in totality before we make a decision on one specifically, just to make sure we really understand what all of these amendments might mean for the Downs overall. And, you know, potentially as a council, this might also be an opportunity to revisit the CEA and make sure that if we're making these zoning amendments, that we're also looking at that as well.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Gleisting?
Yeah, so I really concur with what John and Councillor Johnson said. You know, you have zoning for a reason, and people come in with the understanding when they build their businesses there, or they move to the area, you know, of what we were planning, what we thought. I do think there's some compelling reasons to make this change. So, you know, it's usually if I'm against something, I'll even vote against it on first read, because if I'm against it, that's the way it is. But I do want to learn more about this, and I do want to hear back from the planning board. But I concur with Councillor Clucci. You know, there may be some tweaking of it that, you know, would make us feel more comfortable that it's still within the, you know, within the spirit of how this was zoned, because this was zoned. This is a very special place. This had more town input than anything has ever had. And I think it's with great trepidation that I would just sit here and say, well, then let's just rezone it because they've come back in front of us and the market's changed. You know, there was a huge public input on the entire project. So I do think it's with trepidation to do it, but I would like to learn more. So I will be voting yes tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Hamill, I believe you wanted to say something. Is that correct? Yep, go ahead.
No, you know, this is a tough one. I mean, I generally want to be as flexible as we can be in terms of trying to encourage successful enterprises in the Downs. That said, I would hate to wake up one day and we have a giant warehousing distribution center in what was supposed to be an innovation district. And, you know, it's a permitted use and it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the planning board likes it and the long range planners like it. And well, I guess, you know, that's what happened. So I'm really struggling with, you know, how to balance that and what we would use, frankly, as a means to do that as a council. So you know, I am in principle in favor of trying to support what they want to do, but in the end, I think we run the risk of having something in the, you know, in its final form that doesn't look like what we signed up for. And it does not represent what the public saw when we voted in, and I didn't vote in favor of it, but when the council voted in favor of it. So that's the nub.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'll just add my comments. I'll be as blunt as possible. I absolutely support this. I think it is a compelling reason, but I would not support this at second reading the way it is. So unless something comes back that makes me feel like we've guarded against I know it's called the Amazon situation. I know it's kind of a beating a dead horse, so to speak, but if this was second reading, I would actually, I'd be a no. I think that we need to rework this. So when we, as a councillor, I think we can keep the character innovation district relatively easily with a little bit of tweaks here. So I'm going to be as blunt as possible. I'm a no if it comes back the exact same way that it is now. I think you can kind of drive a truck through it the way it's written right now, and we need to tighten that up without trying to, no pun intended, without squandering your guys' opportunity. There will be a recess after this vote, by the way. So with that, Tony, do you want to call the vote?
Councillor Clucci?
Yes.
Councillor Gleisting?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Hamill?
No.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
It passes. Thank you.
And with that, I am going to break till 8:30. If there are no objections, I need to take a little bit of walk. I
too, that's why. Getting a little delirious.
Ken, did you? I know you tuned into the conversation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for giving us the time.
06 plan talked about a crossroads marijuana.
Yep.
And in that conversation,
How do you get cultivated?
among other things, said,
I don't know.
we're also, I mean, what good is it?
Listening. Hi, Terry Mishu. It's Peter's wife. Tara and I spend a lot of time together, right? Scholastic reasons. I do. I think I know it's all out there, and I know this is usually not strong, but I do want to put together. I feel we have a lot of dates for it. I think they're good, and you know what I mean. But I'm getting anxiety because I don't have more time.
I was just telling Ken, in spite of the council choosing not to formally do the one-on-ones, I mean, yeah, of course, I'm going to reach out and show you this because then I'll hurt you.
You're going to take a vacation now?
No. I understand so much better what it's concerned.
I spent an hour with him too. Yeah, I talked to him for a while today too. And I understand a little bit better.
I think if others have concerns, I think I would benefit just understand and then see if there's a way to satisfy it. I need a piece of chocolate.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. I will call this meeting back to order. We are now on to order number 2107, an act on the following request pursuant to Title 23 MRSA 3025 and the requirements of Section 4 of the Scarborough Street Acceptance Ordinance as recommended in the town's engineering memo for Downs Road, Route 1, Gristmill Lane, Mill Common Lane, Gristmill Lane, and Passageway. I don't think the town manager is here, so Mr. Hall, you want to give us the background?
Yes, I think this is the third similar matter in front of council. As I kind of prepped you for, there was a push this year to move some of these things through the process, and we're pleased to move them through, frankly. This essentially is the phase one, if you will, of Scarborough Downs. This has moved through the process from construction through this point at really light speed comparatively. But these roads have been constructed to all of our standards, and they've met all the other requirements of the street acceptance ordinance. And therefore, we do recommend that you consider approval.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Councilor Gleisting?
So I think some of the other ones we were looking at had been 2, 3, 4 years. Is that right?
Yeah, in some cases approaching 10, but yes.
So, but are we already doing these, or are the developers still doing these? So in some of those cases, the town was actually already doing the maintenance, the plowing, and all of that, but we just hadn't formalized the process. But
just to be clear, in those cases, if we were doing work on private that we had not accepted, we're doing it under a contractual arrangement where they would pay us for that service. But we do not provide public services on private ways. We can't.
So, I mean, do we have a policy or anything in an ordinance about the timing of these things that we shoot for? I mean, it just seems like, to have this so unevenly done.
It's all a function and incumbent on the developer to complete the work, construct them to our standards, and then to complete all the necessary paperwork. And frankly, it's the paperwork that often lingers. It's getting the deeds done and just all of the monumentation in place. So for all intents and purposes, the road looks, feels, drives like a public street, but they've failed to meet all of our requirements. So to their credit, they have moved very quickly through, and they've met all the same requirements.
So it's never us. They just have to go through the steps, and then as soon as we get all the steps completed, we complete this step.
Correct. And frankly, I don't want to say that this is a meaningless vote because it is important, but so long as they meet all your requirements, I don't think there's a reason that you can say no, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. And it's an obligation of the town. I was just trying to understand how the process works.
And just the last point, for those that linger multiple years, much less 10, those become problems. So we're very pleased to get them through and in our hands sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any more? Tony?
Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Glystein?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you, it passes.
Thank you. We are now on to, actually, before we get to it, just a quick heads up, these kind of coincide together. So first, we're going to vote to increase the size of a committee. I believe Councilor Anderson will offer an amendment to the next order, I believe. And we'll debate that as well. But just as if you're watching at home, these kind of go hand in hand. So with that, order number 2108 is an act on the request to amend the charges for the Ad Hoc Charter Committee and the Ad Hoc Downtown Development Committee to increase the number of at-large members from 7 to 9. This is sponsored by Councilor Glystein. So Betsy, you want to let us know your thinking?
Yeah, these are very important committees for the town. And, I think we discussed last time at the, we discussed this briefly before we looked at applications, that there's just a lot of benefits to having more folks on. We can break into subcommittees. We get, a wider range of experience from people. And there was some discussion, we could always enlarge them later, but I think, the folks that we want to have engaged, we want them engaged in the very beginning. So that was a thought process. And I think several folks last time expressed that they agreed with that.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And to avoid confusion, would anybody like to offer up an amendment, Councilor Anderson?
Yes, I would. I'd like to move approval to amend the main motion to include the Board of Education as an ex officio non-voting member of the Ad Hoc Charter Review Committee only.
Perfect. Is there a second on the amendment?
Second.
Good. And now we're discussing the amendment only. So the question, what we're discussing is, are we adding an ex officio BOE member to the Charter Committee? So with that, is there any discussion? Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think because the charter has a section specifically dedicated to the Board of Education, and they're mentioned in 2 other articles, I think it's important that we include them and let them have a seat at the table, just in case there's any changes that may impact the Board of Education going forward. So I really think having them represented as a non-voting member with the other elected officials would be really beneficial to the committee.
Thank you. Councilor Katarina?
Yeah, I just have I don't disagree with adding a person, but maybe I misunderstood the amendment because it's hard when you don't have it in writing. Is it to add 1 person from the Board of Education? Did the amendment specify that?
Yes, just 1.
Okay, all right. I just need to clarify that.
Yeah, and it's just the charter and it's ex officio. Yep. Okay. Any other comments? None? Tony? Oh.
No,
no, go for it.
I'm just still processing, so I'm going to
process away. Councilor Glystein.
No, I think this is a really good catch. That I do believe a BOE member will be very helpful on this committee. So I support this amendment.
Councilor Clucci?
So to the rationale, I guess I'm trying to think through. We also mentioned the long-range planning, the planning board. There's a lot of other organizations that are mentioned or impacted by the charter. And all of them had the opportunity to apply for the committee and go on. So, but I love the school board. I do think it's helpful if we're working hand in hand for these things. So I think I will support it, but I need a little time to process it. That's all.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, sorry. Tony, go ahead.
Councilor Clucci?
Yes.
Councilor Glystein?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Councilor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. It was unanimous.
Now we're back to the main motion as amended. Any discussion? No? Okay. With that, I should have said this on the amendment. John, Councilor Anderson, thank you. It is a good catch. I think it's going to lead to a more collaborative process. So thank you for catching that. Tony, you want to call the vote as amended?
Councillor Cucci?
Yes.
Councillor Gleisteen? Councillor Gleisteen?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Then now we're on to order number 2109, which is the act on the request to approve the appointments for the Ad Hoc Charter Review Committee and the Ad Hoc Downhead Development Committee as recommended by the Town Council. I will briefly read the appointments. For the Ad Hoc Charter Review Committee, we have Allison Bristol, Alan Foster, Nick McGee, Annalee Rosenblatt, Karen Shoup, Richard Silkman, Mary Starr, Mike Stevenson, and Michael Wood. The council representatives will be Councillor Katarina and Councillor Gleisteen. And for the BOE representative, I believe they are going to pick their representative at the next meeting. And for the Downtown Development Committee, we have Kimberly Bridgham, Art Dillon, Travis Kennedy, Sarah Layton, Thomas Madden, Basha Mohammed, Kimberly Rand, Brian Shumway, Bruce Zivik, excuse me, and the council reps will be Councillor Cucci and Councillor Johnson, and the representatives of the developer will be Rocky Rispera and Dan Bacon. Okay, so with that, do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Councillor Cucci, and then Councillor Hamel. Yep.
Just thank you to everybody who applied. And this was not an easy selection process. We had over 25 applicants for each committee. I think it's great that people are willing to step up and take part in these really important committees. So, and I look forward to working with the Downtown Committee and seeing the work done on the Charter Committee. So thank you for everybody.
Thank you. Any others?
I'll just stop.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Hamel, then Tom. I'm sorry.
Yeah, congratulations and good luck to the folks that are on both of these committees. I like this way of doing business, and it's a great way for folks to be involved and to make meaningful contributions. And it's a wonderful way for us to tap into some outstanding talent that we have in town. So I wish everyone the best of luck. And I think these are two, rock star committees. So thank you.
Just a quick segue. Speaking of the talent, I have a communication all prepared to go out to those folks that expressed interest on these committees, going to make them aware of our other vacancies and see if we can find another place for them to contribute to the purpose here.
Councillor Gleisteen?
Yeah, and I would just like to add, if you applied and you're not on the committee right now, please stay involved. These will be, I'm assuming, I'm hoping, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I hope these are recorded. Keep up with it because, those committees will need input. Thank you for applying, and we'll see you on the next committee if you're not on this one.
Any others? Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody and I appreciate their offer of contribution. When I first came to the council, there was a general perception, I think, that folks are very busy and they either can't engage or don't want to engage. And I think this 52, I'm still blown away, 52 residents stepped up to engage in these committees. So however we got them to do that, we're probably starting to do some things right, I think, through the communication and whatnot. Allison's a great asset for it. So we should just, continue that, because I know there's a lot of folks out there that want to be part of the community, and I thank them all.
Yeah, I think I'll just piggyback on that. I totally agree. I think the participation in these committees is evidence that we might be moving the needle a little bit and we're doing something right. So the community center committee and these two, I mean, it's been phenomenal. So although this isn't us, I think it's a reflection on the efforts that are made by staff and us. So totally agree. Tody, you want to call the vote?
Councillor Cucci?
Yes.
Councillor Gleisteen? Councillor Gleisteen?
Yes.
Councillor Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 9 is non-action items. Dawn, do you have any? No, just that was a throwback joke. No non-action items. Item number 10 is raise your hand if you have any standing or special committee or liaison reports, and I will call on you. Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, I just want to throw something out for the council to maybe start pondering a little bit. Our planning board, who's a great group of folks, okay, are averaging about 4 hours per meeting. Yeah. A lot of that's COVID, understood. We got derailed and we've got some catch up. But I've been told by the chair at the planning board that they have caught up. So they should start getting back into a normal process. And I think we ought to just keep an eye on that, because volunteers should not be doing 4 hours to accommodate folks that understand, have a need, but it's like all of us, we get in line and we wait our turn. So anyway, just food for thought. I think we should watch that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other special committees or liaison reports? Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, I had 2 quick items. Wanted to, number 1, thank Jody for her help in getting us, ready to make some appointments, recommendations in the next appointments negotiations committee meeting. It's December 7th, but there are some 20 opportunities, roughly 20 opportunities available to people for people to participate in a wide range of committees. So I would encourage those that that are interested to contribute in that way. That the committee work is really important. It's a foundation for everything that we do at this level. So I hope that people will respond and that we can pump that up a little bit on the airwaves. And I just want to say tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, there will be a Shellfish Conservation Commission meeting, and that'll be in person, properly socially distanced in the first floor conference room of the Public Safety Building. So we're looking forward to that. And special thanks to Tody and to Nate Orff and Tom to try to get folks back on track with that, which is a requirement for us to complete before the end of the year.
Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, just to remind folks of the long-range planning hearing on the comp plan. There's another meeting tomorrow night, I believe at 6 o'clock, online on Zoom, and the link should be posted, I believe, on the meeting agendas and on the front page of the website. So Scarborough website.
Thank you. Any others? No, I guess my report out is I'll just give a brief synopsis of the last 2 leadership meetings. I know I emailed it to everybody, but the last 2 leadership meetings have focused around this long-range, the comprehensive plan timeline that has taken a lot of our airwaves and our time, so to speak. On that note, I want to thank everybody for the workshop earlier. I feel like we're in a good place. It feels nice to have a process. Again, this process is a little bit cumbersome. It's a little bit confusing. So I really appreciate everybody's collaborative effort to inch forward. I feel like we're leaving with a clear path, and thank you, Councilor Anderson, for stepping up. A couple other things to report out is I would like to, probably next meeting is perhaps publicly vote on whether we should go virtual meetings moving forward. One of the things that we discussed when we first went all virtual, it was an extension of Tom's decision because of essentially the state locking down. But I don't foresee that happening again. I could be wrong, but I think this decision, I guess what I'm trying to articulate is Tom doesn't necessarily piggyback this off a governor's decision right now. So I think I would like to discuss as a council publicly and vote if we think we should go virtual for, let's say, X amount of time and revisit it. So I did want to just say that publicly to just consider. Secondly and here's the fun part, the goal setting workshop, the annual goal setting workshop, Saturday morning, wait for it, on January 9th. January 9th. Jean Marie loves Saturday morning workshops. January 9th. And tentatively we're gonna
what stop picking on me.
No, I just remember last year the Saturday morning workshop did not go over, it went over like a lead balloon, so we did. So January 9th, time to be determined to do our annual goal setting workshop, January 9th. And that's all I have to report out from leadership, except for the Dunstan property. But I feel like Mr. Hall he primed the pump earlier, and I will wait for his report out tomorrow. So, okay, with that, raise your hand if you have any general councilor comments for the end of the meeting. Any general councilor comments? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Tony?
Councilor Clucci?
Yes.
Councilor Gleifstein?
Yes.
Councilor Anderson?
Yes.
Councilor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous.